I kind of had, I was gonna give you a head.
Kept it sharp.
So.
But I already had it on this morning.
Right.
Well, you don't have to worry about sticking around.
It's already on.
People won't forget.
Exactly. It's better about that in school.
Have you been?
I've been all right.
I saw that on Facebook. I saw
I
it.
was so drained. I'm still kind of drained. I'm all better, but I'm still drained.
You've been traveling around a little, I see on Facebook, going to some nice wilderness areas and stuff.
Yep. I went to Alamogordo for the first time.
Oh, yeah? So you're covering this for the newspaper?
Yep.
She and I had a direct confrontation issue.
Traveling roadshow.
Take care of yourself.
But after that. Hey, Alex.
I couldn't find a bakery. Couldn't find a bakery anyplace. But I found a Dairy Queen and I got a, what is it, a chocolate dip ice cream cone. But I couldn't bring it with me. On the way out of town, there's a little Dairy Queen. If it's on the right side, if you like good ice cream, it's an old fashioned Dairy Queen. I mean, having models is probably okay, so it's like a juicy sweet to my oh yeah, love Dairy Queens. Fraser Burgers. Hey Stuart. How long did they keep it? Chocolate ice cream.
So Monday. You guys have actually.
Okay, back to all the things I did when I on the plane all the time.
Really on the road this week. Yeah.
Yes. If I go. Yeah, sure.
I know.
Well, yeah, I hope. No boats cast for let's go. Right, that's right. No, you. Thanks.
I'll call the attorney.
I'm not saying I
was there trying to and then actually some done it so that
it blew out so like
Don't be telling that.
That's how social. 91, because of the pre-clearance, because we challenged. Right.
No, sir.
He may be on Zoom. I don't know.
You might get the farming. Yeah, I guess I heard your voice at some point.
Did the ABCs? Making sure.
Well, I wasn't there for the beginning. I was there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, I was there. I was like, I'm not sure. I'm sorry. My bad. May I introduce you to the chair? Sure. How are you? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to send you like that. I saw an opportunity. I know. I saw an opportunity and I took it.
He's sitting right over here. Yeah.
Pictures or something. Oh, it's a great company. You know what? If I see one of those companies.
I did get, well. You're a geographer by nature. I'm a geographer.
Well, you know, maybe I'm here so it's easier.
I'm forced into this. Like that map.
Oh, it didn't?
Well,
wasn't
it
very
didn't get me
detailed.
to the.
It wasn't very detailed.
Yeah, right. And I didn't see that sign until I went the second time around.
Actually, you have a computer chair. You turned it to
I went past.
Yeah, it's like after.
Yes.
Turned it right at the stop sign. So like way around, he may have actually gone past the street.
Right. Yeah, but I'm
All right,
glad.
friends, we're gonna go ahead and get going. If folks want to find their seats, again, just a friendly reminder, please turn off your cell phones or put them on silent and take your calls outside. Otherwise, I'll be getting you all.
Where do you want it?
Yes.
I appreciate it. It's good to see you.
I know.
I should tell her that Denise.
Yeah, that too.
Hey.
Hi, Representative.
Representative Douglas. Good for you.
Coming through the.
It's unannounced, I haven't heard
Good to see you.
I got everything ready to go. Thank you. Great. Yes, that's ready to go.
So you put them on the hard drive rather than.
These are linked to the browser. I just broke it up.
Okay, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. John. My name is Ed Chavez. I'm Chair of the Citizens Committee. We will begin first by acknowledging some of the dignitaries in the audience. You are all dignitaries, by the way, but we have those who have volunteered to work in the legislature. Stuart Eagle, Senator Stuart Eagle is here. Welcome and thank you for attending, and we look forward to your comments. Let's begin by taking roll call. Ryan Angelosi here. Senator Lisa Curtis.
Present.
Robert Radigan.
Present.
Joaquin Sanchez.
Present.
Former Senator Michael Sanchez.
I'm here.
Christopher Salcedo.
Here.
Okay, the entire committee is present. Why don't we take a moment to introduce ourselves? Why don't you want to begin, Mr. Salcedo?
Sure, I'm going to do so. Christopher Salcedo, I have a law practice in Albuquerque. I've been in Albuquerque now since, gosh, I guess 95. Grew up in Doñana County. My wife is an educator, have 2 kids, the youngest of which is about to start his junior year of high school. So fun time. I was appointed by Senator Greg Baca, and I so far have found this process to be very educational, and I completely trust today will be the same. So I look forward to your comments. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Curtis. I have 4 children, 3 grandchildren. I've been a trial lawyer for about the last 30 years. I represent people all over the state. In fact, I'm hoping my nephew, who's an air traffic controller here in Roswell, will show up at this meeting shortly. I actually am really interested to hear this meeting. So far, this is our 5th public meeting, and all the citizens have been really educated about their area, their district, and what they want to do. So I'm telling you, I will have questions. Where you want lines to be drawn, why you think that where your neighborhood is a community of interest that ought to be looked at for redistricting purposes. So I think this process is important, and thank you all for coming.
Good afternoon. My name is Ryan Angelosi. I'm Albuquerque, New Mexico, born and raised. Went to the University of New Mexico. Now I'm currently working at the University of New Mexico Health Sciences as the Director of Economic and Community Development. Before going to the university, I had the great honor of working for state government. I was Deputy Chief of Staff for Governor Susana Martinez. I also was the chair of the Republican Party for one cycle. It is great to be here. I love Roswell. I love all of our representatives and senators from this area. Southern New Mexico does a lot for the state. Our state is such a diverse, wonderful state. And we've been able to travel all around Europe and Las Vegas, New Mexico. It's incredibly beautiful, but I'm very grateful for what comes out of Southern New Mexico. It's very unique, it's very special, and it helps our children go to school. And so it's wonderful to be here in Roswell, and look forward to heading down south to Doñana County tomorrow. But thank you for coming out today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Michael Sanchez. I was born and raised in Belen. I went to Belen High School along with my wife. Went to the University of New Mexico, graduated from there. Also went to UNM Law School, graduated of UNM Law School. I've been practicing law for a little over 30 some years, close to 40 years. I've been married for 52 years. We'll have our 52nd anniversary here on August 30th. I have 3 grown children who 2 of them live in New Mexico. One of them moved away to Illinois. And I have 4 wonderful children. It's really a pleasure to be here. It's really a pleasure to see my very good friend, Stuart Ingle, who I admire greatly. He is one heck of a legislator, I gotta tell you, and he represents his district. I gotta tell you, it would be a real mistake to ever get rid of Stuart Ingle because he does such a wonderful job. And of course, the other representatives I don't know as well because they were on the other side of the house, so I'm not going to comment about them. But my other good close friend is Senator Tim Jennings. And I'm sorry that he's not in the Senate any longer because he also represented this area well and cared about the people more than anyone can really imagine. So I'm glad they're here. I'm glad all of you are here, and I'm looking forward to your comments. Thank you very much.
Now we'll go to the members attending by Zoom. Joaquin Sanchez.
Thank you, Justice. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. First of all, my apologies for not being able to be there in person. It's as one of my colleagues just mentioned, this has been a very powerful experience of learning about our state through people's experiences and stories and interests, as well as their hopes and fears. So that's been very powerful. And just a little bit about myself. I'm a public school math teacher at South Valley Academy in Albuquerque. I have 2 sons, Isaac and Josue. Isaac's an 11th grader at Robert F. Kennedy Charter High School, and my oldest son is going to be starting in the civil engineering department at UNM this fall. Teaching is actually my 3rd profession. Out of college, I worked 7 years myself as a civil engineer, worked 20 years as a community organizer with the Industrial Areas Foundation, and have now, I think I finally found what I'm interested in. So I am a slow learner, but you know, we all go at our own pace. And the only thing I wanted to add is in thinking about our title, the Citizens Redistricting Committee, I initially thought about that as that the 7 of us are the citizens, but just through this process, I've learned that the Citizens Redistricting Committee is the citizens of the state, and that we are just a vehicle and we're holding just these precious stories so that we can translate them hopefully into lines on a map that represent all the stories that we've heard. So thank you, Justice, and thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Mr. Radigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Robert Radigan. I live in Albuquerque with my beautiful wife, Allison, my 6-year-old daughter, Leela. I want to thank Chairman Chavez and members Salcedo, Curtis, Sanchez, and Cangelosi for all being in Roswell today. Traveling around New Mexico is one of my absolute favorite things to do, but I'm limiting personal travel out of an abundance of caution until all my family members can be vaccinated. Along with Joaquin Sanchez, I was appointed to the CRC by the State Ethics Commission as one of the 2 independents. Acknowledgement to Representative Phelps Anderson. Welcome to our non-party. Also want to recognize Representative Pettigrew, who's joined us by Zoom. I serve as the Director of Geospatial and Population Studies at the University of New Mexico. I've worked there for 8 years as the state demographer and liaison to the United States Census Bureau. And so I've been working on behalf of New Mexico throughout the decennial census cycle. Starting in 2018, I was appointed by Governor Martinez as the state liaison to the local update of census addresses program. More recently, I served on Governor Lujan Grisham's Complete Count Commission, which was a broad, nonpartisan collaborative that worked to motivate every New Mexican to respond to the 2020 census. And one of the best things about that experience was hearing from people throughout New Mexico and learning from stakeholders in each community what would motivate census response in that community, because we are such a diverse state. And so hearing the different perspectives from each community was really informative and helpful in that process. And in that spirit, I'm thoroughly enjoying hearing from New Mexicans about what's important to them in the redistricting process, and hearing from New Mexicans about your communities of interest and how they should be considered when we begin drawing maps. With that, I'm eager to hear from you all today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Radigan. And my name is Ed Chavez. I am a native New Mexican. I was educated in public schools in New Mexico. I'm a proud graduate of Eastern New Mexico University for Dallas. It was a school that I needed. As a 16-year-old going to college, it was a perfect university for me. I credit Eastern New Mexico University for any success that people might perceive that I've had in life. I met my wife, and that's probably the best thing that I had. We've been together now for 45 years. We have 3 adult children and 8 grandchildren. And if I ever come back as a human in my next life, I'm going to have my grandchildren first. I love New Mexico. I retired as a New Mexico Supreme Court Justice 3 years ago. And ever since then, I've been doing volunteer work for the executive, legislative, and judicial branches of government. It's been an honor to the state of New Mexico. And I look forward to working with my colleagues on this committee. I know that they are very invested in the work. The pay is not any good, I promise you. But they are working awfully hard. The hours are going to become endless, because just getting this public input is one thing. Under the law, we have an obligation to not only get your public input, but to take it seriously. And we're going to do that by not only gathering in public meetings, Zoom meetings. We have a satellite today next to Easter, so that the folks from Roosevelt and Curry County don't have to travel over here. So we're trying to accommodate the public as best we can. We also have to document the public input that we receive. We will make that available on our website, and then redistricting.org. You can go to that website. You can look at any recording of all of our meetings. You can get minutes there. You can draw maps. You can submit them in testimony. There's a program called Districting that you can use to draw maps. And soon we will be receiving that actually tomorrow, legacy data that will give research and polling data from the Bureau, the Census Bureau, that will then have official population statistics and demographic data that we will rely on. And we will make that available on Districting on our website, so that you can submit written testimonies, draw maps, show how you would like to have your district drawn within the state of New Mexico. And so this for the committee, and I'm really looking forward to listening to the comments from the public here on Zoom and from Portales. The plan is actually to sort of rotate between those who are here in person, those on Zoom, and those who are in person in Portales. With that, for the next item on the agenda, which is approval of the agenda, I would like to make an amendment to the agenda. Instead of approving the minutes of the August 9th meeting, I would like for us to approve the minutes of the August 7th meeting. We have 10 working days in which to prepare minutes, and we're meeting every other day, some days, consecutive days. So it's nearly impossible for us to get the minutes by the next meeting. So that'd be my request to amend the agenda to allow approval of the minutes of the August 7th meeting. Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor with the amended agenda, signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is actually the approval of the minutes of the August 7th meeting. Has the committee had a chance to look at them? You will note that I've sort of changed the structure of the minutes. We are now identifying the speakers in public by order in which they speak, and we are also giving a time stamp so that if the public wants to go and see exactly what that individual doesn't have to say word for word, and the public will be able to go to that. We have an obligation to index and compile and summarize the testimony, make it available to the public, which we plan to do on our website in more detail. But I want the public to be able to access the testimony we've already received by looking at the date and time stamp. The only amendment I would offer to the minutes is the first speaker, Maureen Smolin, is reported as having talked about population related to the Native American community. Her testimony was actually about prison gerrymandering and her opposition to county prison population, prison and jail population. With that amendment, ask for a motion to approve. To a second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes as amended, signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? They are unanimously approved as amended. Next, we will, I've already pretty much given my opening remarks with a couple of exceptions. But when we come to testify, really, we're going to tell is our liaison. She will moderate and get you up here to speak. I don't have any time limits. When you're speaking, in the committee is likely going to have questions for you. But I ask you to remember that there are lots of people who want to testify both here on Zoom and perhaps in others. So just keep that in mind as you present your testimony. And with that, Lily, why don't we begin with public input?
Excellent. First, we'd like to welcome up
Oh, wait a minute. Excuse me, I forgot. We're going to get to redistricting 101.
Thought I missed it. Oh,
Can I give the presentation? I've heard it for time.
yes, please.
Thank you, Brian. Sorry, I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Brian Sanderoff. I think I know 3/4 of the people in the audience who have been.
Is your mic on? Check your button.
Is it on? And so I will make a brief presentation on the principles of districting. This, I think many of the people in this room are experts on it, who have been involved, some of the people here for decades. Michael Sharp, Vice President, Research and Polling, Director of Redistricting Services. You know of him. He's a key player in this whole process. So let's spend a few minutes first sharing our screen. Post disabled. Sunny, can I share my screen?
You should be able to.
Post disabled participant screen share.
Which account are you coming in from? I see Brian S.
That should be me, I think. I did elevate the panelists.
Bring Michael as well. Okay, you should be able to. You see it?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so what are the 5 basic principles of redistricting? You see them here. Equal population, minority voting rights, contiguity, compactness, and communities of interest. Basically, the top 2 are really most important, at least according to federal law. We need to have the whole point of redistricting is to adjust the boundaries every 10 years to account for population shifts so that people have equal representation, the same number of people per district. Different standards for equal population between the legislature and Congress, we'll touch on that. Minority voting rights, very important, especially in places like southeastern New Mexico. Basically, under minority voting rights and the Voting Rights Act, we work to not dilute the voting strength of protected minority groups. Contiguity, can't have two islands in your district. They must touch in some point in space and be contiguous, the precincts in your district. Compactness, think about compactness as shapes. The shape of the district is important. If you see a lot of districts that look like snakes or pencils, you might want to think twice about it and ask why that's happening. And then there are communities of interest. Communities of interest can be anything that's important to you. Shared values, shared interests, economic, social. What about political boundaries, county lines, the Rio Grande, the mountain ranges, neighborhoods, political subdivisions, tribal lands as well. Anything that's important to you as a community should be spoken to. And the theory is to keep those kind of areas together in the same district so they could also elect somebody of their choice. Here's our official census. We do know the state's population, and you see it here. Just tomorrow, we hope that we will also receive county level population data and legislative district level population data. Right now, we only have state data, but we'd only grown 58,000 people this last decade. Our growth rate was 2.8 percentage points. And so this was very little population change compared to past decades. In fact, look at this. 3 decades ago, we grew by 20%. 2 decades ago, 13%. This last decade, only 2.8. Why is this significant? Well, 20 years ago, when we grew 20%, there was so much change and that growth was uneven. And what it caused was here in Roswell, New Mexico, and other places, Portales once, Lee County once, legislative districts were lost to the west side of Albuquerque and to Rio Rancho because the population on the east side did not keep pace with the growth of the state. And so your area has lost representation over the decades because of that unequal growth. This time, we've had less growth statewide, and hopefully that will all be much less dramatic. To give perspective statewide, look at the graph. That starts in 1910. Actually, of course, statehood was 1912. But you can see it's been in this last decade where we've experienced the biggest stagnation. These are regional county population estimates. We're going to get the real numbers tomorrow. So these are estimates. They might be wrong, but they're still important to show because we don't have them yet. So if you look at Chavez County, 65,000 in 2010, 64,007 now is the estimate. So the estimate is to have lost about 1,000 people. You can see the population change in the right-hand column of a loss of 1.4% estimated. Curry County, 1%. Devaca County, 17% population loss estimated. It's in Eddy and Lee where the Census Bureau estimated growth. But some of the folks are concerned about this. You remember when that census form was filled out back in April, May, and June, July, and there's a lot of bust and boom bust going on and COVID and everything. Where were people filling out that census form? What will it really look like for the population counts for Eddy and Lee? Because they're the ones who could help, hopefully, the rest of the east side when it comes to other population losses. You see Lincoln County, a loss of 3% or so. Otero, we include Otero here because many of your districts spill over to that neck of the woods, and Roosevelt County also. So this whole region has gained 3.8% estimated. The state grew by 2.8%. So it's kept pace. It's not as bad as it was in past decades, but still a worry. Here's your regional growth rates. Here it's showing 3.3 for the east side because here the east side is taken all the way up to Union, Harding, and Quay County. Look at Native American lands, San Juan, McKinley, Cibola, also some pressure there with a loss of 3.6%. So what's the ideal population of a Senate district or a House district? Well, you take the population of the state, that 2.1 million, and you divide it by 42 Senate seats. So now the ideal population of a Senate seat is 50,000. It's gained about 1,000 in the last decade. Each Senate seat's ideal population would have to grow by 1,000. And you see the state house seats, the ideal population is now going to be 30,000 to keep that district at the perfect level of population. We talked about equal population and its importance, but there are different standards for Congress. Federal case law and CRC rules require the 3 congressional districts to have almost identical population. We're shooting for 0 deviation, maybe a difference of 1 person per congressional district or 10 people or 20 people, but the percentage deviation would be 0. So we're going for really close. 10 years ago, 31 states came within 1 or 2 people of perfect equity. But in your state, House, and Senate districts, the federal courts were allowed for a little more leeway. Here, the smallest legislative district, let's say state Senate district, and you compare it to the largest state Senate district or House district, there must be a deviation of no more than 10 percentage points from the smallest to the largest. The legislature over the years has interpreted that as plus or minus 5%. No district shall be more than plus or minus 5% from the ideal. In this case, with the CRC rules, it's conceivable the smallest district might be -6 and the largest might be -4, et cetera. There's a little more flexibility here. Minority voting strength. Do not dilute the voting strength of ethnic language minority groups. We talked about that. Protected groups include Native Americans, African Americans, Hispanics. And again, the whole point is to give the minority population an opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice, no guarantees. There's lots of fancy case law on this. We're not going to go through it, but basically we'll be watching it very carefully as minority districts are drawn, ones that are required under the Voting Rights Act. When you don't draw those lines properly, you've heard of the term racial gerrymander. Here you can see an interesting shade district in North Carolina where African Americans were packed into a district that's strung for 100 miles in a very snake-like fashion. That's what we don't want to do. You've heard the terms on gerrymandering, packing and cracking. Packing is when you concentrate too much of a minority group in one district so that they have as few as representatives as possible. Cracking is when you split them so much that they can't elect a candidate of choice. Here's a look at compactness. Again, you know it when you see it. Look at the Texas District 18th Congressional District. That is not compact. Now, we talked about traditional districting principles, but within the CRC rules, they have certain rules. And here they are. This committee shall design districts that are reasonably compact, that are contiguous, that attempt to preserve communities of interest, that take into consideration geographic and political boundaries, including tribal lands. These districts shall be composed of entire precincts and may only be split if necessary to comply with the Voting Rights Act. These are shalls according to their rules, but the CRC may preserve the core of existing districts. This is important, but it's subordinate to the above. It's more important to be compact and contiguous and preserve communities of interest than to maintain the core of existing under their rules. What about the shall not? The shall not is that this committee, and this is different from what the legislature's done in the past, this committee shall not use partisan election data or voter registration data in designing their plans. They cannot look at election data when they're designing their plans until after they finished and adopted them, and they can take a look backward and see how fair they were. The other thing is that this committee shall not consider the voting dress of incumbents except to avoid pairing them, unless there are communities of interest so important that even pairing might be necessitated. That's a tricky language there, to consider, not to consider voting address except to avoid pairing, but pairing could occur if communities of interest require it. Census data estimates. Right now, half the state's population is Hispanic, 36% white. 9% Native American, 2% African American, 3% Asian. The vast majority of Hispanics in New Mexico were born here. This is interesting to many people. This is the northern half of the state and the southern and Albuquerque metro. Notice the percentage of Hispanic population is distributed quite well throughout the state. In fact, in the southern half of the state, is the highest percent of Hispanics. It's just a little different. In the north, there's many of the Hispanic communities are more concentrated. And so you see a lot of communities that are 70, 80% Hispanic. In the south, there's more of a spread out among the towns. Native Americans comprise 25% of the northern half, but only 2% of the southern half. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I've completed the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Zenoff. Billy, can we begin with public input?
Yes, sir. The first person we have is Mr. Frank Sanchez. Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you, Justice Chavez and members of the committee. My name is Frank Sanchez. I was born and raised in Roswell. I'm married and have 4 grandchildren and 2 adult children. I always say I'm so New Mexican that when my daughter moved to Colorado and she was about to have a baby, I wanted to rush and bring her back across the border so that she would have our first grandchild in New Mexico. Of course, it didn't happen. I'm retired. I retired as executive director of a private family foundation. I was one of the lead plaintiffs in the lawsuit Sanchez versus King, voting rights lawsuit. I'm a member of the Coalition for Equity, a local advocacy organization. Before I begin my remarks, I would like today to pay tribute to Congressman John Lewis, who passed away last year, a hero and champion of the Voting Rights Act, a man that sacrificed everything to ensure all people could vote. Last week was the 56th anniversary of the signing of the Voting Rights Act by President Johnson. In 2015, I had the great privilege of attending in Selma, Alabama, the 50th anniversary and commemoration of the Selma to Montgomery March, which led to the passage of the Voting Rights Act in 1965. Our delegation, the reason for wearing this t-shirt today, that was our delegation's t-shirt. We were a delegation of foundations, joined President Obama, President Bush, John Lewis, and 40,000 people in the commemoration. Joining also were the many unsung heroes of the civil rights movement. The event and the crossing of the Edmund Pettus Bridge was powerful and inspiring. It brought me to tears thinking about the sacrifice the leaders of this movement made to expand democracy in our nation. I gained an even deeper appreciation of the civil rights movement and their leaders. The Voting Rights Act transformed American democracy, and it enfranchised millions of voters who had been denied the right to vote. For our voting rights lawsuits, I give all credit to John Lewis, Dr. King, the civil rights movement, and all the unsung heroes. What I'd like to do now is to move into the core of my remarks. As I said, I am one of the lead plaintiffs in the Sanchez versus King lawsuit. The lawsuit was filed challenging the legislative House redistricting plan drawn by the legislature in 1982. Under the Voting Rights Act, my remarks are to emphasize the historical context for this lawsuit and how it has framed legislative redistricting since 1984. It was the first successful lawsuit under the Voting Rights Act in New Mexico. However, I remind the committee that the very first successful voting rights lawsuit in New Mexico was in 1948. It was brought by Miguel Trujillo and a Sleda Pueblo leader. The lawsuit found that excluding Native communities from voting in state elections violated the Constitution. And that, reference to that's in our lawsuit. It was called Trujillo versus Garland. And no surprise, it was based on the 14th and the 15th Amendment. Our lawsuit laid out a framework for drawing legislative districts that are fair and equal for minority voters in the state. It had particular impact for minority communities in southeastern New Mexico and Pueblos and Navajo Nation in northern New Mexico. It also provided a powerful historical context why the judges ruled in favor of our claims, and it laid the groundwork for lawsuits under the Voting Rights Act against local jurisdictions. The lawsuit was filed in 1982 by a number of individuals and organizations representing minority communities across the state. The plaintiffs included over 40 Hispanic leaders from around New Mexico, several Hispanic legislators, the All Indian Pueblo Council, the GI Forum, and several Navajo leaders. In a sense, it was a coalition of Mexican American communities in the South and Native communities in the North, those most impacted by the legislative plan. The lawsuit was heard by a federal 3-judge panel made up of Judge Oliver Seth, Judge Ed Meacham, and Judge Juan Murciaga, 3 well-respected judges. The lawsuit made 2 challenges to the House redistricting plan in 1982. First, that the plan violated the principle of one person, one vote. The legislature had drawn a plan based on a votes cast formula. And I'll let Brian over breakfast or over coffee explain what the votes cast formula was about. A formula that fell to create districts of relative equal population. The court ruled quickly on the first challenge. It struck down the plan on the grounds that it violated the principle of one person, one vote. Based on this first challenge, the court in June 1982 ordered the legislature to draw new House districts of equal population. The legislature did draw new House districts under the order, but the plan did not resolve our voting rights challenge in the second challenge. The second challenge was based on the new House plan. We claimed that it constituted racially motivated gerrymandering, which resulted in the dilution of minority voting strength, specifically Mexican Americans in the South and Native Americans in the North. The claim was based on the violation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act as amended in 1982. On August 1984, the judges ruled that based on the totality of the circumstances, with a very strong opinion that the New Mexico House plan was racially motivated gerrymandering and had diluted minority voting strength in violation of the Voting Rights Act. In their ruling and opinion, the judges laid out the totality of circumstances of the House plan and why it violated the Voting Rights Act. It affirmed for us, of course, what we knew about the political process and how we have been shut out in this part of the state and how natives have been shut out in parts of the North. The judges wrote, and mostly quoting from their opinion, minorities had not been elected to office in southeastern New Mexico because of different electoral schemes that shut them out of the political process. That there was racial bloc voting, there was a history of official discrimination in southeastern New Mexico. There are inequalities and disparities of education and employment for minorities in southeastern New Mexico. That voter registration among minorities is depressed. That voter participation among minorities is depressed. The legislators, or the incumbents at that time, went to great lengths to minimize the voting stream of minorities in the Southeast and in the North. The legislative plan, and we've heard this term from Brian, cracked the minority community. They went to the center of our voting strength and broke it up into various districts. So in our case here in Roswell, 3 districts. Overall, the House plan was, according to the court, overall, the House plan was racially motivated gerrymandering. As a result, The judges ruled in our favor on 17 of the 19 districts challenged. This time, the judges did not give the legislature an opportunity to draw districts. It drew 17 districts in order re-elections for the House. And much of those districts are drawn were based partially on our plans that we had submitted to the court. The court drew House districts that provided the minority community the opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. Majority minority districts that did not dilute the minority vote. And by the way, the state did appeal the ruling or the opinion to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court did not hear it and just remanded it back to the two-judge panel. So it stayed. As part of the consent agreement, the state agreed to pre-clear the 1990 we agreed to pre-clear the 1990 redistricting plan with the Department of Justice. That set up the next chapter of the lawsuit. As a result, in 91, we challenged the state Senate plan and asked the Department of Justice to reject the plan. The Department of Justice cleared the House plan. The Department of Justice agreed with us and asked the Senate to redraw their plan, specifically in the Southeast and a Senate seat. The state Senate drew a plan that gave minorities the opportunity to elect candidates of their choice and did not dilute minority vote. For the Mexican American and minority communities, the judge ruling was a seminal moment in our political history, which we really didn't have much of a political history because of being shut out. But it was an important moment in our history. First, it confirmed what we knew, that we had been shut out of the political process. Second, districts were drawn that did not dilute our vote. It gave us for the first time opportunities to fully participate in the political process. Third, the decision laid the foundation for us to challenge electoral schemes such as at-large elections. We filed lawsuits and challenges all across southern and northern New Mexico based on the Voting Rights Act against school boards, city councils, and county commissions. We prevailed on every one of our lawsuits and created single-member districts across the state that gave minority community the ability to elect candidates of their choice locally. Eventually, because of our lawsuits, the state created a law that required jurisdictions over a certain population to draw single-member districts and eliminate the at-large election system. That's why we hardly have the at-large election system in the state of New Mexico. Throughout the 90s, 2000s, we continued at a slower pace to challenge other jurisdictions such as hospital and community college boards. We prevailed. In fact, the last lawsuit that I participated in about 10 years ago was challenging this community college board, this college that we're sitting in. And they never went to court because it created single-member districts, and the college board members run in districts. Since 1984, we feel that the Mexican American community in southeastern New Mexico has made some progress in participating in the political process and electing candidates of our choice. I tell this story today because I believe for us, this lawsuit and the ruling is a foundational document that needs to be read and understood by all those drawn districts. I ask you to learn and understand our historical context and understand the framework laid out by the judges 40 years ago, which is still very relevant today. We do not want to go backwards. Just like any other citizen, we want to be able to fully participate in our nation's democracy. To conclude, I want to respectfully make some recommendations to the committee if I can. First, and I have a copy. First, I want you to take some time to read and review the Sanchez versus King decision. In my opinion, as I've stated, it is a foundational document for redistricting in this state. Two, you take the time to read. I know you got a lot of reading. Take the time to read the book, Bending Toward Justice, the Voting Rights Act, and the Transformation of American Democracy. For me, it's the best history of the Voting Rights Act. And it gives you the story and the reason why we have a voting rights act. My third recommendation is for further reference. And it's not under your purview, I know that. But I feel I would be remiss if I didn't make this recommendation. I believe members should be added in the future to accommodate more citizens in the state on this committee. That this is a great committee. I've seen all your resumes and the things that you've done. Clearly, you are professional and a great committee. But clearly missing are Native Americans and Mexican Americans from the Southeast on this committee. It is a glaring oversight. And if you refer back to the lawsuit and you read it, that's exactly what they were saying all across New Mexico. That was what was happening. We were being shut out. And again, I recommend it. It is a glaring oversight. Mexican Americans and Native Americans have been some of the groups in the state most impacted by redistricting. I want to thank the committee for allowing us to tell our story. I appreciate your hard work on this new effort by citizens to the district. I wish you the best on this maiden voyage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Questions from the committee?
Yes, I do.
Dean Sanchez?
So, Mr. Sanchez, thank you for your testimony and for your part in the history of making New Mexico a more just state. Two questions. One is the first part of your testimony, if you wrote that out, is there any way you could share that with us? Because I'd also like to know that narrative and understand that story as I'm thinking about what we're doing. So is that possible?
Sure, I can give someone my notes. Yeah.
If you give them to me or give them to Lily, we can post them on the website as well.
I appreciate that. And then the other is, I also know that I think you mentioned that you're today, but I know that you're from Roswell. Is there anything specific to your community that you want to bring to the table in terms of the redistricting or anything specific to the community that you live in on a day-to-day basis?
I'm not totally prepared to do that, but the most important thing is never crack our community again, break up our community, that we stay, and I don't know, the reason I don't want to comment on this is because I haven't seen the census. I don't know what the new numbers are totally. So I don't want to totally commit to something, but that we keep intact. For sure, District 58 as it is, and there may add more population, but I don't know the numbers. But I think that's what I'm saying in this testimony. It's essential that you understand this lawsuit and it's foundational, and that we stick and not go back, and that we not crack the communities.
Is it, can you first tell us about the House districts that are implicated in the city districts? Maybe is it possible? Just to give us an idea.
Yeah, if I can remember, 58, obviously, 63 up in Clovis. There's one, I can't remember, in Hobbs, in Lee County. And we actually had grew a district on the border at one time, on the border. And I don't know if the population is still there to do that. For the Senate, it's Senate District 32, which used to be Senator Jennings' district, that we ran over for the Mescalero Apaches. And then the district in Southern Eddy and Lee. Those are the ones that were impacted before, in southeastern New Mexico.
And as you look back on the districts as they were first drawn by the court, there's been substantial change in the districts, in boundaries of the districts.
Not substantial. Yeah. It's still some of the same communities. I don't know if this is a proper place to raise it, but the thing, and I know that you aren't looking at voter performance numbers.
Right.
But
except for purposes of the DRA.
Well, then you should look at it, because I'm concerned that voter performance numbers are being used could be used to dilute minority vote. What I mean is that where a demographer puts a very strong angle performing voter performance, against a weaker Mexican-American precinct. And the numbers totaled out, it was like 65% minority, but it still gives some advantage. And I've been checking with our attorneys, and I don't even know if it's a voting right, to be honest, if it's a voting rights. But I think that is something to look at. It's kind of a backdoor in my opinion of weakening minority voting.
You know, it would be a personal opinion, but do you have a personal opinion as to whether or not the minorities are voting cohesively?
For the most part, they are not totally, we're not monolithic.
Exactly.
We're not monolithic. And that's why that word, choice is very important to give our communities, a choice of candidates. We want candidates to compete for our votes. And some of that has happened in some of the single member districts where people go out and compete for the vote, and they're not all Mexican American, and some have won in what might be considered a Mexican American district because they go out and work. They go out and ask for our vote. They do things for us. So there's no guarantee.
That's true.
Yeah.
I was just hoping to put up the maps. That's what I was trying to get them to put up the map.
Sonny, you share?
Because I'm not sure exactly what he was talking about. I think House District 58, 62.
63.
What was the other one? Sorry.
63 up in Clovis.
And then you mentioned some in Lee County. And
Yeah, Lee County, I don't.
61.
61. And then in Alamogordo was in 82, would you draw a majority minority district?
Can you tell us in this area, you made mention that the Escalera tribe was not in the district it's currently in. I mean, right now it's in Roswell's district.
It was, and again, I so it's, it was in the Senate side in 32. And when that was done, we supported, we had a lot of conversations with Mexican Americans with Mescaleros about doing that, because we were concerned, if that was the right thing to do. And we reached some agreement.
Chairman, Mr. Sanchez. So Mescalero doesn't have very many places it can go to, according to the maps, right?
Right.
So we can either go up into Lincoln or down into Otero. Maybe, no, it can't go into 42. Do you have any suggestion about how or where, again, based on the information you get from them as well, because I know there's that collaboration. Is there any suggestion that you have? And before the numbers come out.
Yeah, well, I thought when we did 32, it is a good district. And it made it a majority minority district. And we would like to keep it that way. Of course, in consultation with the Mescalero patches.
And Mr. Chairman, those majority minority districts that you're talking about, house districts, do you want to expand on those house districts or keep them the same?
We want to strengthen them, but keep them the same in terms of boundary, but we want to strengthen them always.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Sanchez, is there enough of a population outside of those districts to maintain the integrity of the majority minority districts?
I think there is, but again, I do not know the numbers yet. I don't want to say something I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. I appreciate your answers.
Thank you.
Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sanchez, first, thank you for being here. I actually made a comment, I don't know, two meetings, perhaps in the past, that I hoped we might hear from you or from this community on some of these issues. So first, I guess I have an ask, if you will. When the numbers do come out, if you could work with the software that's now available and help identify by drawing maps the communities of interest that specifically that you're talking about. Specifically, let's say Roswell, that you believe need to stay together. And I say communities of interest because you mentioned the Voting Rights Act. Communities of interest, of course, have a lesser standard. So I think it's important to identify that and so that we may consider it. Second question, if you can answer, please do. If not, let me know. House District 63 is one that has come up, and actually, can you pull that up? Just so that you can see it. You mentioned in Sanchez v. King, there were a number of districts that were at issue, a number of communities. One particular community, though, came up in 2001 and 2011. Same issue, really. And it was part of Sanchez v. King, and that is the west side of Clovis, basically. And I'm looking at 63 here. That's that little piece that sticks out under 64. So my question, and again, if you can answer, great. If not, with perhaps members of the community, if you could help with this. What are the boundaries of the community? Is it still a cohesive voting community? Is it still predominantly Hispanic? If you could help us with that. I think
as far as I know, it still is. I don't go up there as much as I used to. And the difference with the district that was drawn, that Brian would know this in 2000, I mean, in 1984, was that it didn't extend. It didn't extend to Santa Rosa. And somewhere along the lines, it included Clovis and Portales. And to me, North Portales with West Clovis should be fit more together. But again, I don't know the numbers. I don't want to speak out of school.
And North Portales is in House 63.
Is it?
Get under the mic, Brian, so folks can hear you.
North Portales, yeah, House 63.
Microphone.
Sorry. House 63 does have North Portales, as well as the minority communities in Clovis, and then goes out to Guadalupe County. What happened over the decades is because the east side did not keep pace with population growth. The district had to continue to grow and increase in population to maintain its minority protected status. So it started out as Clovis Portales and the minority communities, and then expanded over time because of the east side districts just needed to expand more because they didn't keep pace population-wise.
But don't even answer your question. I do believe North Portales, South Clovis, West Clovis are, people said, community of interest and should be part of the district.
So you're saying they should be maintained whole
Yes.
in one district?
Right.
But I guess I want to make sure I understood your comment. Are you saying that those communities should be part of the larger Clovis community, or with Guadalupe County as it is now?
Yeah, I would have to know more about Guadalupe County because I was concerned when the district stretched all the way out there. And I think the community was too at the time.
I appreciate your comment.
Yeah, and are you going to Clovis or have you been to Clovis?
We actually have a satellite there today.
Well, I hope somebody there that knows the next American communities, Hispanic communities would respond.
We'll have the community liaison check with Portales and see if anybody has signed up to speak. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Sanchez?
Chairman, thank you.
Joaquin or Robert?
No more questions for me.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you.
Justice
Chavez, Senator Jennings is soon, so we're going to have him come up next. Senator Jennings.
Good evening. I've been to 4 of these redistricting here, sessions all the way from 1980 up until 10. So there's a lot of things in these that are real important. Some things I think that you have to look at that when you look about the equal population, the board and minority voting rights, anyway, have them all together, compactness, community of interest. There's one huge item that is left out, and that's economics. And I can't tell you enough about the value of economics. When you look at districts should be equal, and everybody can pretty much agree with that without any problem. Minority voting rights, it's very important, but it's not everything. And I can tell you when I come and I look in our community and I look about how Little Leagues are structured or were structured, they're not now because one of them went broke, but how they were structured. The problem is that you can have a lot of minorities that single parent households of men or women who have single parents that end up in a lot of the lower income areas with a number of minorities that need to be included in a group of people, because when you look at how things happen in your community, anymore things were a lot more probably together as in minority blocks. But in our area today, I think when you look in southeastern New Mexico, and you can look at things that people are going to say like oil and gas. 30 years ago, when you went to an oil and gas well, everybody on there spoke English. When you go to one today, if you don't speak Spanish, you can't communicate with the workers. And those same workers come out and live in the communities, and you just have to look. Their economics has to be moved in to a level of consideration in how you redistrict. If you want to me, kind of pull the people who are economically deprived, who we all lump together and say because they're minorities, they were economically deprived. The area also falls with just plain people who are single parents and other things. And I don't know, when we did all these districts, when we did 58 and 63 and those, there are a lot of issues there. Nobody really thought about economics. But economics is a huge portion of how people are represented. And it's equal, if you're a kid and you have a single parent, the chances of you being deprived or not getting the same opportunities of a minority person are just as high as if they were discriminated against for year. They're just as high. And I just ask you to look in your own schools, and if you want to throw something else in there, why don't you sometime look about what about a person's abilities are if they're challenged. Everybody can talk about everything in the world. The only thing every group, minority group, or any racial group in this country doesn't want to be called is retarded. And yet that is a word that everyone uses in every race. And so sometimes there are other areas that have to be discovered and talked about in these books to me. And when I look at the things that we have going on, and we look at in our past, in one of the last redistricting things that happened in one of those, all of a sudden, if you go across New Mexico and you take every Native American tribe, everyone, and you put them all together, It came down when Joe Skeen was running for Congress, and they came up with a district that was all Native American. That was really, it was almost perfect on the numbers, and everything else was there. And the problem was when you put all that together, you know, it also put Joe Skeen in the same district. And that was somewhat, that's because you came down and got the Mescaleros, which got Lincoln County, which is where Joe Skeen's ranch was. And yet, when you turn around and you look on a political basis, going through politics, there is a huge difference between the Pueblo tribes in this state and the Navajo Nation and the Mescalero Nation. There are huge differences between them. And that needs to be recognized somewhere in this whole thing. And in looking, when we had the Mescaleros in there and how they got lumped into District 32, which I represent, or represented for years, was one thing is we had a lot of areas of economic interest between the Navajos, or between the Mescaleros and southeastern New Mexico, and most of it was Highway 70, and where the people came from to go in and go to horse races and gamble in Ruidoso, where they came from. We had a huge number. When they opened that track in Hobbs, it devastated the Ruidoso Downs track. I mean, it was hard on it. And but yet, when we had Highway 70, and we put Highway 70 through here, it's Senator Engel and I and some others got them to 4-lane. That was a huge economic boom to the Navajo Nation, and that's when they put us all together. And it was probably as important as any other decision that was made. But I can tell you, when everybody voted to add Hobbs and add that racetrack in Hobbs, it really hurt the economics in Ruidoso. So economics needs to be in that community of interest or concern in there somewhere about it. And I just say that when you look at some of these things, some things change. And when you look about, if our area was 53%, the southern half of the state was 53% Hispanic and 40% up north. You know, that generally, I'm not sure that's exactly how they vote. It's a lot different. So I think some things I would ask that you look in economics. And when you look about groups of people that are discriminated against, and I know maybe under the Voting Rights Act, you can only use these cases, but economics is just as much as important as anything else that's in there. When you look at these things, little bitty things, whether you know it or not, little bitty things make huge differences. It's just like who your electric company is. And nobody in New Mexico knows really, other than the people in Southwestern Public Service, or the east side of the state. Everybody else is on the West Coast grid. We're on the East Coast grid. And it makes a huge difference. And what happens in our ranch is on the West Coast grid, and Roswell is on the East Coast grid, and it creates differences that need to be looked at, and you should be aware of when you start putting groups together. Because how your electric company and the things that your electric and the rates you can get in your electric company make differences in the legislative districts that you represent. And forever and ever, I mean, P&M was a lot higher rates than we had in southeastern New Mexico. Were huge. And so you have to look at healthcare. And why? Because UNM does not serve the state of New Mexico. And don't you ever think it does. Because the whole south side of New Mexico and the east side of New Mexico is served by Texas. And it goes so far as even getting our children into universities, because it's easier, well, I don't know about, they have had some changes at UNM allowing medical students into UNM from minority groups. But for a lot of kids, it's easier to get into Texas Tech University for a professional school than it is to get into University of New Mexico, by far. And that should be noted. But the healthcare is almost, it's hard to get into UNM. It's hard to get an appointment in Albuquerque to see a doctor. But here, I mean, that's where we all end up. And that really has huge bearings on things when you start looking about Medicaid reimbursement and how over there, they don't, there's property tax they allow to be put in the Medicaid and Medicare reimbursements rate, but they allow it in Texas, they don't allow it here. They're on how they build their rate structures. It's very unfair on reimbursement on how and it makes a difference how your doctors get paid. These are all things that you have to consider that are in this, and I hope you will look at it. When you look at about New Mexico, and all of a sudden you have a position against oil and gas. Well, okay, that's fine. It works out real good in Albuquerque. But if you look about the people doing those oil and gas jobs, they're not Anglos anymore. They're Hispanics. And yet we have our whole state, who's a majority minority state, tell them to cut it off. Well, those aren't Anglo jobs anymore. So, you have to be in tune with this kind of stuff, what's going on. And when you look down here at when you look about the growth that they've had in Carlsbad and Artesia, a little bit in Roswell, but not anything like Eddy County and Lee County. When you look at that growth, I mean, our bank has financed two 350 man caps, person man caps for people to live down there, because there's no motels, there's no place for them to work. And I mean, it's a huge area of interest that you have to be in tune with. Walmart, big place like Walmart, they couldn't get workers here. They bust people in, and they wouldn't let them park in the local parking lots. Albertsons wouldn't let them park in their local parking lot. They had to bus them to the store where they worked at, because of the implosion or the explosion of oil and gas workers here that happened. And so that economic level has to be considered in what we're looking at. How many of those people ended up on that census number? Oh, I can tell you the estimates that we had in Carlsbad were over 75,000 people. And I don't think they counted all the people in the man camps, but I'm going to tell you, they were definitely there. And if you don't believe it, you just have to go down there and sit trying to get it through a four-way stop, or you go to look at the largest, probably Allsups in the whole chain, and maybe even how they even got they're supposed to be getting a Love's truck stop in Loving, New Mexico. Look, I mean, Loving is, I mean, you can almost throw a rock across the whole town. And those kind of things have to be looked at. And I know you're going to divide all this stuff up according to equal population. But the cost and the economic benefits and the things, a lot of the decisions you make here aren't going to represent the true costs of the people who are down here working, to me. So when you look about Mescalero, like I said before, they're not the same as the Pueblo tribes and the Navajo Nation. They are very different people. And you have to take that into consideration. That is extremely important to them. Whether or not they're in Otero County, but their water and sewer system, all their sewer system goes to Lincoln County, because it's hard to make that stuff run uphill. We tried in Santa Fe making stuff going uphill. It doesn't go very well, some of that stuff. So we need to look at that a little bit and look about the areas of interest because it's so important and how the racetrack goes and how that's tried, that goes with Native American gaming in Mescalero is very critical. The highways getting into from Texas to, when you have a 2-lane highway, 2-way 70, you have all these trucks down in Carlsbad. And I'm going to tell you, if you try to go to Tatum, I sat there for 2.5 hours a Sunday afternoon last week, coming back because of one car wreck, because you had a 2-lane road and they had a wreck and you sat there for 2.5 hours and it was 6 miles outside of Tatum. So let me tell you, they could have got a record in there in 2.5 hours. But that's what happened. And that's what happens when we don't get fair representation and get highways to come back to justify the economic levels that we have here. And some of this is not, it's just how uneven the representation can be and the funding levels that we get here.
Are there additional points you want to make about economic development or infrastructure, or are you open for questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry if I thought.
No.
That's fine. I'm open for questions.
Any questions from the committee?
I'm sorry, usually in the legislature, you had to tell them 3 times before they listen. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sunny, is there anybody with a hand up on Zoom?
I believe Wendy Austin has her hand up on Zoom. That's Wendy Austin.
Wendy, we've allowed you to talk. You can unmute yourself at any time.
Hi, can you hear me?
Ma'am.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, members of the commission, for listening today. My name is Wendy Austin, and I'm the Deputy City Administrator for the City of Carlsbad. We have a great relationship with our current senators that represent Carlsbad and Eddy County. This being said, we do feel strongly that the current districts do not provide us with a senator who can be focused on our community. And we believe our population numbers and our economic contributions to the state should make a case for a dedicated senator. Once the census numbers are available, we hope to work collaboratively with all of you to ensure that we are fairly represented. And again, I just want to make a brief statement, but I thank you for your time today, and I thank you for listening to my comments and my concerns.
Thank you, Ms. Austin. And in summary, you do not want Carlsbad split up. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that is what I'm saying. We would like to have Carlsbad with the opportunity to have a senator and split separately.
Any questions from the committee?
There are no questions, but once again, I'm just asking.
So Ms. Austin, if you're able, once the new census data is in, to work with folks and submit a map that kind of shows how you think the district should look, that would be very helpful. We're going to go next. We don't have anybody from Portales who, I'm sorry.
If you could just hold this.
Yeah. So Carlsbad is split 3 ways between 3 Senate districts. One is 41, that's coming from Hobbs. One is 42, that's also coming from Hobbs. So you've got a Hobbs Carlsbad district in 41. Yeah, that's a better look. So 41 starts in South Hobbs and travels to Carlsbad. And that is a minority district, or was created 30 years ago. Then there's another district, it's the other part of Hobbs, the north end of Hobbs. Let's go back to the north end of Hobbs, and it goes to Carlsbad.
Mr. Chairman and Brian, is that the Hobbs district also the majority minority district? Why that's created that way?
41 was created as a minority district, majority Hispanic district. Combined the Hispanic minority population in Hobbs with the minority population in Carlsbad. That created on paper a 50% Hispanic district. Then that left the rest of Hobbs, and it was combined with the rest of Carlsbad. So like northern Hobbs and northern Carlsbad, that's 42. But still there was some extra population left in Carlsbad, so it was split 3 ways, and then the other part of Carlsbad is 34, And if we take that all the way to Alamogordo. In fact, you recall you heard testimony from someone from Cloudcroft, you recall, who said that the Cloudcroft High Rolls area belongs in the Alamogordo district, and they explained how it was coming all the way from Carlsbad. Here you can see it now from the other side of the fence, so to speak. So Carlsbad has one district that goes to Hobbs, another district goes to Hobbs, another district that goes to Alamogordo.
And Mr. Chairman, was that because of the population decrease 10 years ago? That you had to expand those districts?
Not that much, because Leonetti did have some growth. Not really. It's really due to the consequences of what happens with 41. If 41 takes half of Hobbs and half of Carlsbad, then you've got to do something with the other half of Hobbs and the other half of Carlsbad. And then as compared to, let's say, having a Lee County Senate District, Eddy County Senate District, and Otero County Senate District. So that would be the different approach. And you're also seeing 32 here very well, like former Senator Jennings was talking about, and Frank Sanchez, where it's going from the minority population in Hobbs and Artesia, and then all the way to Mescalero. So Roswell split 3 ways, Carlsbad split 3 ways. So is Artesia.
Mr. Chair, could I ask a question of Ms. Austin?
Yes, okay.
Ms. Austin, are you still on?
Yes, I am.
I was just curious how, and I appreciate you sharing your testimony, but how have you experienced this, splitting of your community into 3? Because, on one hand, it could seem like, oh, well, you have 3 representatives in the state legislature instead of 1, but could you share a little bit more about why you would feel better represented with one who's looking at your community holistically rather than having the split that exists now?
Sure, again, and thank you for allowing me to elaborate a little further. And, like I mentioned, we have a great working relationship with the senators that we do have now. It's nothing to do with them. It's just, we feel like that with our population size and with all that we have going on here in Carlsbad, just that dedication of someone being here would help us be more productive and would help us better with our message to the state.
Thank you.
Other questions, Ms. Austin? Thank you, Ms. Austin.
Thank you so much.
Next, we have Ms. Missy Courier. Ma'am?
Let's see what Missy says. Just sorry, real quick.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. My name is Missy Courier, and I'm also here on behalf of the city of Carlsbad. And I have comments from Mayor Janway. So sorry that we're going to double up on this, but this will hopefully complement some of the information that Ms. Austin just provided. Good afternoon. My name is Dale Janway, and I'm the mayor of the city of Carlsbad. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on redistricting. Carlsbad has had one of the highest population growth rates in the state for the past decade. So this issue is of high importance to us. We want to make certain that our community receives fair treatment when it comes to the redistricting process. This is not intended to be any sort of negative comment toward our area's representation in the state legislature. In fact, we have great respect for these individuals and their advocacy for us. However, when it comes to the Senate in particular, we do not have an individual whose primary focus is on Carlsbad and Eddy County. We have senators in Otero County and in Lee County who each share pieces of Carlsbad, but we are divided into thirds on the map, and we are not the primary focus of districts 31, 41, or 42. While the senators in these 3 districts have traditionally advocated very strongly for Carlsbad and its interests, the current split is unfair to them and us. It is harder for them to attend community events a mountain range away, for example, and their representation is split between their constituents here and those who live in other distant communities. It is difficult to pursue or receive a fair distribution of capital outlay funding when you don't have dedicated representation of one of our state's growing and larger population areas. We understand that this will be a recurring concern for rural areas, but glancing over the Senate map, Carlsbad appears to be the highest population center in the state that lacks its own specifically focused representation. As the redistricting process continues, we ask that you please address this deficiency. Thank you. And to follow up on that, I just learned that I need readers. And also to follow the process, once the census numbers are out, of course, we will be submitting maps that help to show how that might work better and how we would like to see that representation. Thank you.
Yeah, I ask you to keep in mind that as you draw that map for the next go around, I'm going to ask you to draw not only your preferred district, but how it affects the rest of the state.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Has that been contemplated what the impact is? If make Carlsbad whole on numerous things, not just on the other Senate districts, but also on the minority voting rights issues?
Yes, ma'am, we have looked at that. And one of the things that we are very cognizant of and look forward to doing is working closely with Chavez and Otero and Lee counties to ensure collectively that we are not disenfranchising any of the voters in that area, to ensure that everyone's voice is strong and that the larger population areas are represented as best they can, as well as the more rural areas.
Any more questions from the committee for Ms. Courier?
It's a question that isn't redistrict. I mean, are you related to Mike?
That's my dad.
That's your dad?
Don't hold it against me, please.
Tell him hello from Michael and Raymond Sanchez.
I will do that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Representative Nyberg, sir.
Thank you, Justice Chavez and Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I also want to thank you for coming to Roswell. I know that the last week or so and the next week or so are very busy on your schedule, and I appreciate your taking time out to come to our community and listen to the concerns of the citizens in our community and the surrounding areas. I probably come before you in a little bit different position. I represent House District 59, which on your map, it's quite a large district, maybe not the largest in the state, but it's one of the larger ones. It's about 250 miles round trip for me to go to Roswell, to Corona, to Carrizozo, Capitan, Hondo, and back to Roswell. And I appreciate the opportunity to serve not only the citizens in Chavez County that I represent, but also the citizens in Lincoln County. And I often joke that in Lincoln County, I represent all the cows and not many of the people, because my portion of Lincoln County is really the very rural, unpopulated portions. It's interesting that I represent one large school district, being the Roswell Independent School District, with about 10,000 students. And then I have 4 small school districts. And that brings an interesting perspective to my job as a legislator, trying to represent not only the larger end, but also the smaller end. A couple of the districts, less than 100 students. And that brings some interesting issues to the table. I also come before you, I was not the sponsor of the bill that created this body, but I was roped in to negotiate this bill during the legislative process in the House. And so I saw some of the slides that were put up on the board, and some of those issues were part of the political process as to whether those things should go in or not go in, and that was just part of the process. So one thing that I would ask of you at the conclusion of your work, I would ask that you all get together and provide at least me, maybe the whole legislative body, with a list of suggestions as to how this process worked from your perspective and some things that we need to do legislatively to correct some things that you see that need to be addressed. I would appreciate that. I'd be happy to advance that as we go forward. I know it'll be 10 years down the road before we do this again, but that insight, while it's clear on your minds, would be very helpful to me in trying to address that. You have some real challenges in front of you. I think for the first time in many decades, maybe southeastern New Mexico doesn't get taken to the woodshed. Maybe our population growth in the Eddy and Lee County will help offset some of the losses that Mr. Sandroff spoke of earlier. And we see on the map a couple of those. Jason Harper's district, District 57 in Rio Rancho, was Dan Foley's district in Roswell, New Mexico, not long ago. It got moved up there. Likewise, Senate District 33 was Rod Adair's district here in Roswell. It got pushed west. It's now Bill Burt's district in Alamogordo, which still comes into part of Roswell. So we in Roswell can sympathize with the city of Carlsbad and their maybe lack of having a senator located within their city. So we can sympathize, and I think that's a real challenge for you as to how you address those situations. I would like to point out one Senate district that overlaps House District 59, and that's Senate District 39. That's represented by Liz Stefanik, and I can tell you that we're on the campaign trail in some of the smaller communities in Lincoln County. You'll notice Capitan. She doesn't have much of Carrizozo. I think she comes down the highway, but doesn't get much of the population in Carrizozo. But Bill Burt has most of the population of Carrizozo, but she does get up into Corona. And so you talk about communities of interest, and I look at that Senate district and I go, you know, the folks I represent in Lincoln County, they can relate pretty well with the folks in Chaves County, and I think with me. But it's real tough for them to have a senator living in Santa Fe County. And being from the southern New Mexico, we view Santa Fe with somewhat different eyes. And so I can tell you that if you're looking at protecting communities of interest, Senate District 39, I think, presents a challenge to you because that district stretches from Ruidoso, New Mexico to the Las Vegas, New Mexico area. I don't know how it got created, but I can tell you if there's gerrymandering in New Mexico, that might be the poster child. We talked a little bit, or Justice Chavez asked about changes in the districts. In the districts that affect Roswell, New Mexico and Chaves County, I've been involved in the process for several redistricting efforts. I would note the last two really have gone to the courts, as Justice Chavez well understands. And hopefully this process may resolve that. That's our hope legislatively, is that this process may resolve those court challenges. And so I hope that's the outcome. No guarantees. I don't know what people will do, but we've had some districts change. Obviously, when you take a district out of a community and move it far away, that impacts the community. It impacts the representation of that community in the legislative body. And so we've gone from having two senators to really having one senator that lives within the Pecos Valley area. That's Senator Pirtle, formerly Senator Jennings' Senate seat. And then all our other senators here are from Hobbs, Alamogordo, and Stuart Engel up in Portales. In the House side, my district basically runs west of Main Street to the west and into Lincoln County. Representative Azell's district 58 is more compact here in Chaves County. It's only in Chaves County and gets the southern part of Roswell and then wraps around into the downtown area and up on the southeast side of Roswell. And then you have Representative Anderson's district, which is basically east of Main Street on the northern part of Roswell. And he does get the historic district downtown, which most people think is in my district, but it's actually in Representative Anderson's district. And then his district goes up into Portales and then around over into Lee County, where he gets Tatum and I think even part of Lovington. So the challenge is, what do you do with an increasing Lee County population? Maybe a stagnant or a slight decrease in population in both Roosevelt and Chavez County. You're going to have to redraw some lines there, and that would pose a challenge. And I guess that's why you hired Mr. Sandroff, is to do that tough job of moving some of this stuff around. We do expect some change, but frankly, I wouldn't expect a lot of change in most of the districts in southeastern New Mexico on the House side. You talked about this District 63, which I believe is Martin Zamora's district. That area lost population, and you're going to have to expand that a little bit, but Martin Zamora represents District 63. We talked a little bit about Senate District, I believe it's 41, which is David Gallegos' district from Eunice. 61. And he resides in Eunice, and he represents that district that goes from Southern Hobbs into Carlsbad.
I'm sorry, I thought you took the El Paso district. Yes.
Yeah, it's 41,
Senate.
I'm sorry. Senate District 41, David Gallegos' seat. So those are challenges that lay before you. I would note that I found it a little bit interesting. We talked, or Senator Jennings talked a little bit about economics. And let me just tell you a little bit about, from the legislative standpoint, and capital outlay and its impact on communities. You have 3 senators representing Carlsbad. That could be a plus with respect to capital outlay allocations. You have 3 senators who can chip in quite a bit of money there for capital outlay projects for Carlsbad. If they were only represented by 1 senator, they'd probably do a little worse in that regard. In my district, having a number of senators interested in Chavez County, it's easier in Roswell, but it gets really difficult in rural Lincoln County because Senator Stefanik is having to concentrate her efforts in many other communities that she represents. And it's not compact, it's not contiguous, it's pretty spread out. So she's having to put a little bit of money in a lot of communities. Sometimes from the house, my standpoint in the House, which I don't give as much money as the senators, a project in Corona, I'm having to bear most of the weight of those capital outlay projects because the senator is not able to contribute very much because it's getting spread pretty thin. So, you know, economics that Tim talked about is very important. Capital outlay, whether we like or don't like the system that's there right now. And it does impact communities, and it does go hand in hand with the work that you're doing in dividing these lines and drawing the lines. And so if you take representation real far away, and that person has a lot of other communities to attend to, just recognize it's going to impact people on the ground in certain, particularly rural communities. The last thing that I would leave you with is that, you know, I am a true believer that democracy works. People get the government that they elect. And we can gripe about it, we can complain about it, whatever, but we truly do get the government that we elect. And it's been my honor to serve in the House and represent District 59. And I can tell you that most of the people that I serve with are there with proper motives, pure motives. And notwithstanding what we see in the headlines oftentimes, people are there trying to do the best that they can for their community, regardless of party registration, regardless of race, creed, color, religion, whatever the tag is. People are there to do the best job that they can for the people that they're representing. And I firmly believe that. And I think that oftentimes in this process, we kind of get pulled apart. But I hope that at the end of the day, people recognize that we're all trying to do the best that we can for our communities, for the people that live in them, and to make this representative democracy work as intended. And I thank you for your participation in that process. If you all have any questions about the districts, I'd be happy to answer anything you all might want to ask.
Questions from the committee?
Representative, I have a question for you. Because we're trying to understand breaking up all these cities. You know, Roswell, Carlsbad, Cobb's. And you said you have Main Street over. And then when we're looking at communities of interest, do you know what the division is within Roswell that divides that city up by communities of interest?
Well, coming from Roswell and living here for a long time, being born here, it's an interesting city. You can say that there are communities of interest in one respect, and maybe Mr. Sanchez has a better idea than I do on that. But I can tell you that in my district within Roswell, I represent a lot of Hispanics. Everyone in Roswell represents a lot of Hispanics, and they vote for me. They put me in the office. They voted for me on county commission, our county commission districts. You know, it's more countywide, but so if you look at communities of interest, I think in Roswell you have more the two high schools and a division there, and sometimes you say, well, south of 2nd Street and north of 2nd Street is more of a division in Roswell than maybe Main Street, east and west of Main Street. If you look at the efforts to have districts that are predominantly registered Democrats and Hispanic, then you're looking at House District 58, not my district 59, but Representative Azell's district 58, in my mind, and Mr. Sandroff would correct me, but that was really created to create a majority minority district, and I would say leaning toward the more Democrats are in that district than the other districts in town. Representative Anderson's district, it's northeast Roswell. It's a very strong Republican area. My district 59 is the most Republican or second most Republican district in the state of New Mexico.
So since the political party structure is not really our
Right.
issue, right? That's why I asked you the communities of interest issue. And I appreciate what Mr. Jennings, or excuse me, former Senator Jennings was saying about economics. The statute that actually created, that you were part of negotiating, this committee talked about communities of interest being social, economic, and cultural. Right, so that's why I was asking that question. You know, like if you're dividing up a city, right, and one community of interest could be all of Roswell, or one community of interest could be what Senator Jennings was talking about. You know, where you have a lower socioeconomic group versus a higher socioeconomic group. We've had discussion about that in other of these public meetings. I just wondered if there was some guidance, because my only experience with you is that you work hard, you try hard, you're honest. I mean, I would like to know what you think about the community of interest issue, because this population has changed some. It is going to require some, some changes like that.
In the city of Roswell, if you look at House District 58, I think the intention was to do that. Create that type of district where there was more of an opportunity for, and I hate they keep bringing party into it, but for a Hispanic Democrat to be successful. If you look at my district and even Representative Anderson's district within the city of Roswell, Roswell is not a real prosperous community. We have a lot of people who are not doing very well economically. And that population is scattered in all three of our House districts. I have neighborhoods that are extremely impoverished. And so if you look at the economics, I could compete with Representative Ezell in terms of having neighborhoods that are impoverished. Now, I also have a lot of very affluent neighborhoods in my district as well. Mine's probably more of the spectrum. I probably have more of the more affluent areas. Representative Anderson is predominantly, I would say, middle class. Most of Roswell's all middle class, and then Representative Zell's district would be viewed traditionally in Roswell, or at least as the stereotypes go, and not to advance those, but would be more of the economically disadvantaged communities within District 58. And you probably saw that driving down Main Street. As you approach the college out here, you had some pretty tough neighborhoods. Where in Northwest Roswell, you don't see the same types of neighborhoods there. But there are neighborhoods within my district that would look very similar to what we see in just north of it.
So the neighborhoods in your district that look very similar to District 58, would they be on that edge? I could earlier in 93. Somewhere else.
They would be somewhat scattered, I would say. There's you're not going to be familiar with this, but Military Heights Elementary School is an elementary school in town that has children who come from the wealthiest families in Roswell and some of the poorest families in Roswell. And the ironic thing is, when they've had good principals, that school has outperformed every other school in town. Even though it was virtually 50% economically advantaged and 50% economically disadvantaged, if you want to use those terms. And so that district or that area, those precincts are up off of 19th Street in Union. And that's not anywhere close to 2nd Street, which is traditionally the dividing line in Roswell. But, that would be my response to that is, no, they're not necessarily right next to one another in my district. It's scattered. I have some really good, or there are some areas of Roswell that are affluent that are right next to areas that are not affluent. And it's in southern Roswell, and it's exists in northern Roswell as well. Roswell's not like a lot of the other towns in New Mexico. I grew up in Clovis, and you could basically show southern Clovis as being stratified differently than the rest of town. But Roswell's more intermixed, has pockets of affluency and non-affluency within close proximity.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, doesn't it doesn't pertain to redistricting, but I'm getting messages on from different people telling me that they can't hear you or other commission members because they're not speaking into the microphone. The presenters are being heard fine, as I understand. But for those who are watching and listening, you need to be more cognizant of it. It's about the third or fourth message that I've received.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Representative Knight?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative, and I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. We heard of Carlsbad, like Roswell, of course, is touched by 3 House districts, 3 Senate districts. What you're saying is Roswell is well served right now by having representation, if you will, 3 representatives, 3 senators. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, I think everyone in Roswell really did not like losing a House seat. And I think folks in Roswell really were concerned when Senate District 33 became a 25% Chaves County, 25% Lincoln County, and 50% Otero County district. We lost a senator. And so, you know, I think that that poses some challenges to you as you deal with the issues that Eddie and Lee County present to you. How are you going to do those districts? You know, Senator Kernan's district comes into Chaves County, but it's maybe 300 head of cattle on a good year and 5 or 6 people. You know, that precinct, I think it's precinct 41, doesn't have very many people in it. Yet it's a big swath of many square miles of land. There's just not many people that live out there. So Senator Kernan does come into Chaves County, but relatively not many people in Chaves County live in the district. Senator Engel has, since I moved to town, in fact, I tell him he was the first political candidate that I put a sign in my front yard when I first moved to town in 1984. And he represented far northeast Roswell, and his district has grown a little bit over the years and sometimes gets retracted a little bit, but he's always represented northeast Roswell. The Senate District 33 was basically the guts of Roswell, and then Senate District 32 was the southern half of Roswell, and right now we're basically have 32, but 33 went to Alamogordo with Senator Burt back in 2012 after redistricting in 2010. So, you know, I don't purport to speak for the city of Roswell, but I'm sure that the city of Roswell would tell you that they would love to have a Senate district that another Senate district that comes into Roswell and has a majority of people in Chaves County. I think any community would tell you that. And you heard from one. So that's what I think Roswell would tell you.
Any other questions for Representative Nyberg? Thank you, sir. Good to see you.
Thank you. And I do hope you'll take me up on my plea to maybe get us some stuff at the conclusion. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, once again, would you remind individuals how to get on to Zoom to be able to make contact with us?
Sunny, would you do that, please?
Yes, absolutely, Justice Chavez. So for folks who would like to make.
I can't hear you unless you're at a microphone.
Oh, I'm speaking directly to that. So for folks who'd like to make public comment on Zoom, all you have to do is locate the button at the bottom of the screen that says raise hand. You press that and that will highlight you to me and I'll be able to allow you to talk. If you're calling in through a phone, you press *9 and that has the same effect and we'll be calling you.
Thank you. We've been going 2 hours. You want to take 10 minutes? We'll be recess for 10 minutes.
A little sleepy.
Don't need that.
No, please. Come back together.
All right, we'll go ahead and begin. Call the meeting to order.
Justice Travis, we have 6 more folks from the community who would like to speak that have signed up so far. The next person, sorry if I get your name wrong, I was trying to interpret your writing. We're looking for Mr. Ryan Howlett. Or it could be an N. Mr. Ryan Nevitt.
Is Ryan in the audience? Okay.
We'll circle back. Next then we have Senator Engel. Senator Engel?
My favorite senator, even though he's 350 miles away from me.
Your Honor, thank you very much, and believe me, I will not talk as long as Tim Jennings or Knight.
That's
I just do know how to get votes easier than that. But anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and this is my 4th redistricting. And this is a very unique difference to what we've had in the past. So it's going to be an interesting thing to see how this works statewide. And I know in the past, I've seen my district go from Jowl to Clayton in one line, clear up the whole side of the state. Really, I liked it, but nobody else did. I didn't draw it. It was not drawn by me. It was drawn by a great friend of mine. Did you see that one too? Okay. Anyway, you know, when I first ran, I had 28,000 people in my district. Now I have 50-some thousand. I had 3 counties, and now I have 5. Rural New Mexico's districts have conceivably gotten bigger. This is a very unusual thing we have this year with 2 counties in the southeast with some population growth that is truly there. So it's going to help in some ways in some of these districts. But then there's also other districts that haven't grown, and we've got interestingly grown districts from Santa Fe to Ruidoso. And those were done certainly while I was there, and I know the reasons why they were done. And those may be changed, I don't know. But these are things that all of us try to work through. And hopefully we always think of the people of the state first. Because that's who we're here to represent, and that's who you all represent very well. And that's the thing we have to always try to do, is make sure that we do represent the people in this state. And I thank you all for serving on a thankless job. That there's going to be a lot of people don't like some of the decisions that are made. Make them the best you can, and the state will survive whatever happens, because we're a state of truly good people. Your Honor, we miss you in the Supreme Court, sir. Thank you all on this committee very, very much for doing what you do, because this is a truly, truly fabulous job.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions from the committee?
I'm sorry. Yes.
There are no questions.
Okay. Know when to sign up.
I'll tell the senator you're welcome.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. All your questions, it's recorded, so I've got it for prosperity.
We have Representative Isel next, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you guys so very, very much for being down in our part of the world. This is the best area of the state, and I proudly promote it every chance I get. Senator Jennings did want me to say, because of the senators that we do have that represent Chaves County, we have the 3 Ps, and actually it's 4 Ps. We have pecans, we have pistachios, we have peanuts, and most importantly, we have petroleum. So I told him I would say that, and I did, so we are very diversified here. I grew up west of LA and south of Big D. And that's Lake Arthur and Dexter, by the way, if y'all don't know where they are. I grew up north of Artesia. I attended Artesia Public Schools. I am a Bulldog. I had the wonderful experience of attending Cottonwood Elementary School. And whenever I say we're diversified down here in this area, whenever I was growing up, Cottonwood School, part of Artesia Public School System, we had pre-first and first through sixth grade. That's whenever the Bracero program was going on. I was raised on a farm. Everybody that lived out in that area was a farmer. And those men worked hard enough, and those farmers helped those men get their families over here, the legal way of doing it. Miss Valenzuela taught pre-first. And it could be from, we didn't have, back in the olden days, we didn't have kindergarten then. But she took those students that were 6 years old all the way up to 15 years of age, and they learned English in 1 year. We were a community. We were all a community. Because their parents knew that for their children to succeed, they had to learn to speak Spanish. They had to learn how to read and write. And those kids were my best friends. Those kids' parents came to every activity that was held at Cottonwood School, whether it was skating on Friday night, the school carnival that went on, the Little League baseball teams that my dad and several of the other men coached out there in that area, the impromptu basketball games that were held. And we still are all friends. Not too long ago, about 10 years ago, at one of our class reunions, every one of those kids that attended Cottonwood School were successful in life. They had their own business. It was instilled in them and in us as a community that we had to respect our teachers and our parents, and most importantly, our God. And whenever you go to tear apart a community, and it's not just Cottonwood, it's our areas around here. And whenever we're talking about, I've lost my place. The rural-urban divide, folks, it's alive and well. It really is. What's worrying me right now is that rural voice getting lost. We saw what happened to a certain district that has been talked about before that is now up and out. And those people lost their representation. Because now their representative has to represent a bigger area. We also see, and I hate using this word, folks, I really do, gerrymandering. But we have one Senate district that those folks know that they can call any of the representatives or senators down here in the southeastern part that live down here in the southeastern part to get the help that they need. And that's disgraceful as far as not being in that community. We have seen growth, the unequal growth in southeastern New Mexico. We have seen this total change in Eddy County. Because it has grown like you can't believe it. I don't know if y'all are going to Carlsbad or not, are you?
Not for me personally.
Okay. If y'all have been down to Carlsbad before in the last 10 years, it has changed like you can't believe. whenever there was made mention earlier of the man camps. There's one on the north side of Roswell. There are several up here in this area. Because availability of housing is that short. We are in the area of the state that does fund the state. Not only through oil and gas, but through agriculture. So whenever I do talk about the rural-urban divide, people down here in this area of the state, and I'm not talking just strictly this area, but the whole eastern side, we are the working area of the state. Sometimes there's counties that do have more cows than we do have people. But you know what? That is some person's job. And if they're having problems, whether it's with the livestock board, whatever the case may be, they need to have representation. So if that person is having a problem with the livestock board, the brand inspectors, are they going to call their state representative or senator in Albuquerque? And are they going to be able to know that answer? I don't think so. To me, I represent District 58. And whenever I was first elected, that particular district was, okay, I wrote it down somewhere. Last song that should help. That particular district was 76.9% and 78.9% Hispanic Democrat. It was a quarter of a district. And I represent my district to the best of my ability. I have met some of the most wonderful people in my district. Those people elected me. They believe in what I do in Saturday. They know that they can call me. Every one of them that I've knocked on their doors have my home phone number. Can you say that about certain Senate seats or certain House seats that are so far off that they don't even know who is their representative or senator? I do represent quite a few impoverished areas, and not just in Roswell. It's also in Dexter and Hagerman, the outer areas of my district. I used to represent Lake Arthur. Lake Arthur hasn't seen any growth. I can't tell you when. Since the Titanic sank, and I'm being real truthful there, because the funding for the town of Lake Arthur was coming up from the Titanic. We saw what happened there. If we don't keep our rural voice active, folks, what is the point of what we're trying to do in Santa Fe to make justice for all in our state? I want voter integrity. I want one person, one vote. But I want representation for those people that are making up those communities. Senator Jennings used to be my senator. I used to be his representative. Right now, Senator Pearl is my senator and I am his representative. And you know what? You can ask any representative or senator from the southeastern corner of the state. We all work together. And we're talking all of southeastern New Mexico. We all have the same values. We all have the same beliefs. We all want the same thing. We want the freedom to live the American life. But if we go to put a divide on where we live out in our rural areas, we're lost, folks. Please keep that in mind. I am anxious to see what the census results are going to be. I am anxious to hear what your comments are going to be prior to us opening the special session again. And a little bit of common sense does go a long way. Thank y'all very much for listening to me. Y'all have any questions?
I do. In your district, Representative Self, how much of your population, if you know, in your district, Representative Self, how much of your population comes out of Roswell? Do you know what that percentage is or what that number is?
It's more than half of my district. It really is. Since redistricting happened 10 years ago, I lost the very southern part of Chaves County. Not all of Chaves, not all, I didn't take in the Big Hill prior to, but I lost the Lake Arthur area. So basically from the, well, y'all may not know where the Gomez Club is. Wonderful people. They helped raise my dad. From there down, I lost all of that area, but I take in Hagerman and Dexter and Midway and Roswell. But I would say half of my district is Roswell. I do represent the Chihuahua area. That is the oldest area in Roswell. Wonderful people in there. But Brian, am I wrong in that? It is half of my district is more than half my district is Roswell. I take in the base, this area out in here. Everything basically from 2nd Street South up to the non-bearing fruit tree streets, if you want to put it that way.
So everything from 2nd Street South.
Yes, ma'am.
Is your district, and then you think that about 50% of your population is directly out of Roswell?
Is what I'm saying.
Directly out of Roswell.
More, greater than 50% is Roswell by the time you added the base area, and they still, it's really hard to designate that because we have South Springs is not really Roswell, but it's still considered part of Roswell. It's not, they cannot vote for the mayor in that time. Okay, they can't vote for the city council, but it's still part of Roswell. But yes, it's over 50%. I'm going to say right at 60%.
Yeah, 60, 65, I guess.
Yes. I do represent
65%.
Estimate.
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate that. Just trying, I'm gonna ask you the same question I asked Representative Nygaard. I mean, why does Roswell want 3 representatives instead of having 8 representatives for the community? I mean, what is the difference in the communities of interest that would mean you want that divided up?
Okay, I'm not going to call it Roswell. I'm going to call it Chaves County. Okay. Within the county of Chaves, we have a very diverse culture. We have obviously lots of farms, lots of dairies, lots of ranches. We have the main business interest is in the city limits of Roswell. Dexter, I'm going to say 17 years ago, was the fastest growing small town in the United States because of people that came in that were building dairies that brought in help with them and everything. A fabulous school system down there, and down in, I call it my valley kids. Hagerman's got an excellent school system. But the diversity that we have in Chaves County, we have oil and gas production in Chaves County. We have all sorts of businesses within Roswell and Dexter and Hagerman as well. But it's so diverse that you can't call Chaves County just Roswell because it's definitely not. Most of the farming does take place from 2nd Street South. We have lots of pecan farms in the northwest corner and the northeast corner of Roswell. Still again out in the country. Well, with the exception of one orchard. We have a population that the majority of the people do live below the poverty level. And you cannot say Roswell is Chaves County and everybody's the same because we're definitely not. I think the representation needs to take place, keeping communities together so that those communities do know where they need to turn whenever there's a problem. It's unconscionable to me that some of these people don't know where to turn to. And whenever they can call somebody locally and get the help they need, that's the way it needs to be, in my opinion.
So, your district, and I don't know, maybe you have better numbers. I mean, the census is going to be out tomorrow about the percentage of minority voters, voting age people that you have in your district. You said something about 70 or
Whenever I was
78% Hispanic district. Do you know what the percentage of your minority age voting population is?
I know that there was a big change right after the census took place in 2010. And I don't have those numbers. That was what I gave you was not current. That was whenever I was first elected. So I don't have the current number. Maybe Brian, Mr. Sandroff does.
No one has current. We'll get that hopefully tomorrow.
Sure.
But in terms of census, holding aside Democrat, Republican, just voting age Hispanic population at the 2000 census, voting age was 62. Among total population, it was 68.
Okay.
And then if you add in the other minority groups, Native American, Black, Asian, it would be 33% non-Spanish white or Anglo, 33% Anglo, 62% Hispanic voting age population at the time of the census.
Okay, and tomorrow we'll know again, but you don't personally have any work that you've done that would be able to give us some indication of the percentage of Hispanic people that live in the district, for instance.
The only information I have to go off of is, well, the census in 2010, prior one in 2000, and what it said then, especially with the 76.9, 78.9. And as far as voting at the polls, I mean, we can't, it's not designated. But I'm going to say that I am still representing, in my opinion, a majority minority in my district.
I'm asking the question because the Voting Rights Act, the concept of packing minority voters into a particular district. That number matters. And that's why I just wanted your input, because I know you know your district and might have some information.
Right now, I don't. And the reason I say that I probably still represent a majority minority is because of our rural areas, because the jobs that these people do have, whether it's working on a farm, on a ranch, in a dairy, hauling cattle, whatever the case may be, and that's why I say that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Representative Rizal, thank you for being here today. I've worked with Representative Rizal for quite some time. I know that you're one of the hardest working legislators we have here in New Mexico. The thing I want to remember in doing all of this is that the legislature here in New Mexico is voluntary. You guys do this, you guys have full-time jobs. And something that you shared with me and Chris during the break is that there are times that you have residents that live near your district that are not in your district, but they might be in another district. But because that district is so geographically large, it's hard for that representative or senator to actually come into the community a lot. So that thus, they come to those that are in the community more often, even though you don't represent them per se in your district. And I just want to thank you for that, because that's something that, with having New Mexico being so graphically large, with really large districts. That one, I want to be sensitive to all of you representatives and senators trying to represent your residents in your citizens within your district as well as you can and keep them a full-time job. You guys work very, very hard. I just want to honor that because I think sometimes people expect government to work very quickly for them, but they don't understand that you're trying to do this and so many other things at the same time. And so we're very cognizant, and I appreciate your comments. I just wanted to thank you for your comments during the break because it really enlightened me to, we really need to keep things compact as much as, or as well as we can, because you guys can't travel 200 miles every week to try to touch every part in some of these large districts. And so thank you for that information, but also thank you that when you get a call from a New Mexican, whether or not they're in your district, you're willing to help them. So I appreciate that very much.
I appreciate those comments, and yes, we do work hard. I have another non-paying job. I'm a rancher. Right now, it's hard to find help. I am the ranch hand out there. I just wish that this is strictly personal. I wish every young kid in our state would have the opportunity to get to spend a couple of months out on a ranch or out on a farm. I really, really do. I know that's not possible. But I'll tell you what, it does make a difference. It does make a difference. As far as right now, I'm helping a woman that does live closer to Honda, or her mother lived closer to Honda. She lives in Pennsylvania now. Her mother had a heart attack and she doesn't know what to do. So, yeah.
I grew up on a ranch and my grandfather had a picture. Below it was written in Spanish. If I had $1 million, I would keep on ranching until I spend it. Tell me about the economy in this region. What have you seen in the last decade? The economic growth?
Yes, sir.
Stagnant?
Yes, sir.
I see it driving through Carlsbad, by the way.
Oh, yeah. I think that we've had pretty good economic growth here. Like I said, we have a lot of agricultural jobs that happen. A lot of work that goes on here, and that does play an integral role in the state's budget. I had the opportunity earlier, I was at the feed store. Thank goodness Senator Jennings has left. I was ranching today instead of ranching. I had on my boot, my summer wear for the ranch. I had on my boots and ugly old hat and my shorts. Getting parts for a tractor. But I had the opportunity to run into Joe Madrid. He has opened up the USDA inspected meat plant out here at East Roswell. He is doing very, very well. Every time I see him, he's like, thank you for helping so much trying to get our protein in our schools and in our hospitals and in our prisons. Right now, I think he is employing around 150 people. And dang good wages on that. The truck drivers that are hauling that meat pay dang good wages. We have jobs around here. Unfortunately, we have some people that don't want to work. So that's why the rest of us do work, you know. But we do have good growth around here. The jobs that we have around here do pay well. We value our employees. I wish I could just find a good paying job too.
That leads right into my next question, and I think you may have answered it. What about the poverty level? Has that improved in this region?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, unfortunately, I hope it's stagnant right now. I still, my heart still hurts for some of these grandparents that are having to raise their grandchildren. Right now, it makes my heart hurt. Mainly because of the drug cartels that are coming, that were coming across the border. And these children are being raised by their grandparents, or even great-grandparents. Unfortunately, that drug scene is taking its toll in lots of areas down here. I'm worried about that, not just for what it's doing right here in our area, but what it's doing nationwide. And until we get that stopped, pray every night.
When you meet with your communities, what are the principal issues you want to talk about?
What they can do to stop all the bad stuff that's coming into this area. We're close enough to the border that it doesn't take long for anything bad to come right up here to this area. I mean, they cross the border and they're in Carlsbad, Artesia, Roswell. They're in Alamogordo, Las Cruces, Denver. To me, that's very, very troublesome. They're in Hobbs, they're in Eunice. It's not going to be a pretty sight. We had an incident down here 3 years ago, I guess it was, where there was human trafficking going on. There was a van trailer in my district, west of Dexter. And in this van trailer, I think there was, help me out there, it's over 130 young people between the ages of 18 and 21 that were locked in this van trailer, male and female. They were fed one glass of water and one tortilla a day. And thank goodness our sheriff's department got word of it. They went out there and there was no working bathroom facilities there. They had no idea how long they'd been. And it's that type of bad stuff that is coming over here. And I can't stomach it. I really can't. We have to put a stop to it somewhere. And it's not just the human trafficking, it's the drug trafficking. And that's what the concerns are. And but as far as our poverty level goes, I would like to see everybody that can hold a job, have a job. That's really not answering the question. I apologize for that. But
you gave me a sense for the community. I appreciate that.
Is that it?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank y'all for being here.
Next, we have Mr. Bernard Treat. Mr. Treat? All right, he's out of here. The next we have Ms. Yolanda Rodriguez and Ms. Ellie Kuna has graciously agreed to interpret.
Mi nombre es Yolanda Rodríguez. My name is Yolanda Rodríguez. Soy una madre soltera. I'm a single mother. Trabajadora en cocina.
Oh. I work in the kitchen.
He vivido aquí en Roswell por 20 años.
I have been living in Roswell for 20 years.
Mi propósito es decirles que yo he tenido.
My purpose is today speak up about my needs.
He tenido como bullying en el trabajo, en la escuela con mi hija.
I have been bullied in this city, in the school where I work.
Había comentado con maestras de lo que pasaba con mi hija.
Even just dealing in the school system about my daughter being bullied.
Y no fui sumamente escuchada.
I was not heard. And it was not bullying, it was racism.
And then, cuando mi hija la tuve mala en el hospital,
when my daughter was sick at the hospital,
y tuve que acompañarla,
I was with her.
y cuando regresé a mi trabajo,
When I came back to my work,
me corrieron.
they fired me.
Yo quisiera,
and I ask you today,
decirles a ustedes que queremos,
to ask you to commit that we want to commit to support you for what we want.
Que queremos que no nos olviden que necesitamos.
Don't forget about us.
Que el distrito nos represente a nuestra comunidad.
We need a district that represents us.
Como hispanos, inmigrantes.
Like Hispanic, Latino, immigrants.
Y que no nos olviden en nuestra comunidad.
Don't forget us in our own community. We have been forgotten.
Yo quiero que mi distrito del Congreso número 2,
I want my congressional district 2
me represente,
will represent me,
a mí y a mi comunidad,
me, my community, my family,
para ser más, para contarnos más, que no nos olviden.
Because we are more in number. I don't understand why they cannot represent us if we are the majority.
Que estemos en el mapa, que seamos una comunidad contable.
I want to see myself in the map. I want to be counted and my representative to see me.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Questions from the committee?
Yes, Mr. Chair. House or Senate? Roswell. Sorry. Okay. So my question is, can you identify for us your community as you see it?
¿Te puedes decir dónde vives ahorita, las calles donde vives?
Yo vivo en la 216.
I live in 216 Church.
Where is it?
¿Dónde lo ves ahí en tu mapa?
And in your opinion, what are the boundaries of your community?
Si puedes agarrar, ver aquí en el mapa, y tú ayúdame, Lorena. Nada más menciona dónde está toda tu comunidad en el mapa. Nada más ve mencionando lo que más allá de eso, como más allá de eso, o sea, más allá, aparte de esa parte de la comunidad que es el 82, 81. 82, 81, 85.
¿Ande? And the 63? Es el 63. It's the 63.
Ms. Rodriguez, what issues need attention from your elected representatives?
¿Cuáles son las cosas que tú estás peleando por tu comunidad?
Yo lo que estoy peleando,
What I'm fighting for.
que nosotros en nuestra comunidad hemos trabajado en el voto.
We have been working to reestablish different voting situations.
Sí, hemos trabajado en grupo, bastante duro para tener trabajos, para que nos cuenten, para tener oportunidades.
We have been fighting for working rights, fair wage.
En el censo, en todo esto hemos estado junto con mis compañeras y hemos luchado.
¿Y a quiénes te enfocaste para que contaran también en el censo?
A inmigrantes, a hispanos, a latinos. Y queremos que toda esta gente tenga la oportunidad de votar para tener una oportunidad más grande de hacernos ver, que nos vean, que crecemos, que venimos y trabajamos y luchamos y queremos ser grandes. O sea, por eso estamos aportando en todo lo que es votos, en censos, en todo esto para crecer.
We engage in census to make sure we count everybody. And it's the reason because we wanna be fair about the voting opportunities of our community that have been left out. And we have been pushing for pro-immigration, pro-workers, pro-farmers at this moment. We are the workers of these counties, the workers of these cities, and we are not being represented.
What are some of the important places in your community that I can get a sense for the boundaries?
¿Cuáles son los lugares más importantes de tu comunidad donde ustedes han trabajado bastante? Todos los que somos donde han estado tocando puertas.
Nosotros hemos estado en todo Roswell.
We have been knocking doors in every single part of
Tocamos
Roswell.
puertas, hacemos llamadas.
We have been doing phone calls, door knocking, y aparte de Roswell, ¿qué otras partes en el condado? Portales, Roswell,
Herman de Esther, todos los alrededor. El cártel.
I was hearing the chair ask, do you have particular landmarks? Something that would tell us maybe in the area that you live in Roswell? A street where your community, you think it would be identified? Something like that.
Que si tienes algo que tú sabes, ¿dónde vive tu comunidad? Es lo que te está preguntando, ¿dónde vive la mayoría de tu comunidad aquí en el condado?
¿Aquí en Roswell?
Roswell is full of like Latinos like me. Dispersed, o sea, spread.
Justice, could I ask a question?
Yes, Joaquin.
So, señora, lo que estamos tratando de aprender y entender de ustedes de la comunidad porque ustedes son los expertos de lo que significa ser comunidad. Si podría representar gráficamente la gente que usted cree que debe de estar en un distrito, en una, ¿cómo se dice?
Ella quiere buscar
En una área que está representado por un solo político. ¿Qué sería esa área? Es lo que queremos saber. Y si no está lista ahorita, está bien, pero queremos entender mejor eso. Y si nos puede dar esa información y educarnos a nosotros de cómo ven ustedes esta comunidad.
Ok, voy a crear un mapa y lo voy a poner porque como mi representante, me gustaría que nos ayudaran o que se preocuparan un poquito por nosotros, que como tocar una puerta, qué problema tienes, o sea, como más enfocado más.
Say, I'm gonna draw the map that you're asking me, but what I wanna share today is that I have been door knocking, phone banking, and the people that I see in the street and in the neighborhood do not look at all how the representative look. And they don't care, like the representative that we have at the moment, do not care about the issues that our people cares in the neighborhoods. So I will do that map for you all, but it's simple. The representative doesn't support what I believe and what I need.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Next, we have Ms. Gladys Salcedo.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Gladys Saucedo.
Good afternoon, my name is Clarissa
Saucedo.
Saucedo.
Tengo viviendo 17 años en Harts, Nuevo México.
I have been living for 17 years in Hobbs, New Mexico.
Soy miembro activo de Somos un Pueblo Unido.
I'm an active member for Somos un Pueblo Unido.
Y por este motivo y gracias a las actividades que hemos hecho,
And because of this reason, for my activism and all the work that we have been doing in the field,
me he involucrado en sacar a nuestra gente a votar.
I have been super passionate and engaged to turn out voters, Latino voters, to vote.
Participamos en el censo.
To engage in democracy, and also we participate in census. We count everybody at census.
En empadronar a votantes latinos.
To empower Latino voters.
Y por esto nos interesa más el tema de rediseño de distrito.
And because of this reason, because we know we have the numbers, because we know we have the engagement, we care about redistricting.
Mi pequeña historia forma parte de una comunidad.
My personal story is part of a whole community.
Que no se siente bien representada.
We don't feel represented.
Por estos motivos.
Because of these following reasons.
Nuestros políticos son.
Our politicians are.
Anti-inmigrantes.
Anti-immigrants.
Anti-latinos.
Anti-Latinos.
Anti-trabajadores.
Anti-workers.
Ellos solo representan a los dueños de compañías de petróleo.
They only support and represent the owners of gas and oil companies.
No representan a mi comunidad.
They do not represent my community.
La democracia en nuestra comunidad.
Our community democracy.
Y el interés de ellos no es igual al de nosotros.
Our community interest is not the same of what they represent right now.
Porque en la comunidad que yo vivo,
because in the community I live,
no hay competencia.
There is no, ¿cómo competencia?
Contrincante.
There is no competition against these representatives.
No hay por quién votar.
There's no other option for who you will vote.
Es un círculo vicioso.
It's a toxic cycle.
Nadie quiere invertir recursos ni candidaturas.
Nobody wants to invest money for a different option, for a different candidacy that comes from the people.
No queremos vivir así.
I don't want to live like that. We don't want to live like that.
En Lee County,
Lee County,
el 60% somos de color.
More than 60% of us are people of color.
La gran mayoría somos latinos e inmigrantes.
The majority of us are Latinos, immigrants, first generation.
Trabajadores esenciales de la industria del petróleo.
Essential workers from oil and gas and also dairy.
Lee es el condado con más crecimiento de latinos.
Lee County is the county that has grown in biggest numbers for Latinos.
según el último censo, a pesar de nuestros números y trabajos esenciales.
Based on the estimates of the upcoming census, and tomorrow you're gonna know the truth.
Nuestros intereses no están bien representados por los políticos.
As a workers of these lands, as a workers from the different industry, we are not being represented by the politicians right now.
Que tienen poder aquí,
Who have power here,
eso tiene que cambiar.
we need to change that.
Esa es mi comunidad.
My community is those workers. My communities are the ones who are working in the fields.
Yo voy a seguir trabajando
I will continue working
junto con mi organización
with my organization
para asegurar que los legisladores
to ensure that the legislators
tomen en cuenta nuestras comunidades de interés.
can take as a priority our issues and our needs.
Cuando están rediseñando los mapas por los próximos 10 años.
Now that you are redistricting the upcoming 10 years,
Lo que queremos es que no nos olviden.
what we don't want is for you to forget about us, those that are working, all these industries.
Queremos un distrito
We want a district
que represente a nuestra comunidad,
that represent our community,
tal y como es.
the way how it is,
Pro inmigrante,
pro-immigrant,
pro trabajadora,
pro-worker,
pro latina.
pro-Latino.
Queremos que nuestra representante
We want a representative
viva en
live
nuestra comunidad
in our community,
de interés
or communities of interest and share
y que
experiences,
entiendan nuestro idioma,
that they understand our language,
nuestra cultura,
our culture,
que conozcan nuestra comunidad
that they know our community,
así como es.
the way how it is.
Gracias.
Pues decirlo de Fox.
Ok. Queremos
What we want,
que consoliden
that you consolidate our power
el distrito 61,
in District 61, House District 61,
es donde yo vivo,
is where I live.
la comunidad hispana
The growing population of Latinos
y afroamericana,
and Afro-Americans,
porque ellos han tenido un crecimiento también ahí.
because we have been growing there.
Ah,
As a context, 61 and 62 are
ajá,
split right now.
era lo que
Oh,
no está bien. Nuestras comunidades están divididas, lo que viene siendo el 61 y el 62.
our community of interest are divided right now, the 61 and 62.
Nosotros queremos que se consoliden y que nos apoyemos para poder hacer este cambio.
What we want you is to consolidate, to take a close look how to consolidate the power of communities and interests in this area. Because right now, either or are being represented. Y ahí está el mapa. No sé si quieres mostrarles dónde está tu, ¿no? Sí, ¿cómo ves? Bueno, pues sí te pregunto.
Can you show us which areas on 61 and 62 you would like to have consolidated?
¿Cuáles son las áreas del 61 y 62 que me quieres considerar?
Y la mayoría de unidades. Esto es 61. 62. ¿Dónde quiere 61?
I live in the 61 of my community.
You need to get the mic. Thanks.
I live in 61 right here, and my community goes up. Hasta donde dice. The corner of Rose.
Can you guys keep expanding 62 up so we can
we work and we door knock all these doors and all, we walk all these streets just with our community of interest, all of the people that are from my community. So it's extend all over. I don't want to exaggerate, but honestly, my community, knowing and door knocking all those places is always, they look the same, this always speak Spanish. It's always claro.
How far west and how far east?
It will be until golf, all this. Yes. So it will be from golf all the way up to all this area. Close to terrace. Like no, it's different. Okay. I think it's just in even walking through this, the case that you are saying is that the community is split. That's why we cannot win. So this is obviously how split fracking looks like based on central redistricting Guanabana.
Travis, any more questions for them?
I would have a question for you. Could we look at the southern part of 61?
Looking at the map?
Yeah, it's
That's a question for you. Right.
61. Sorry. So you recall part of redistricting 101 is also that each district has to have about the same population. And so what I was asking about, how do you feel about the rural areas of Lee County when it comes to, are you working also in places like Eunice and Jal in the more rural areas? Yeah, so part of our frustration is when this district was first built, it did include the most Hispanic Latino farm workers, starting at the bottom of Lee County, Eunice and Jal, and going into the most Hispanic Latino neighborhoods in Hobbs. Then it was reached a certain maximum population at the 29,000 and couldn't go any further. So if we have to keep the district at a similar population to move it up, we would then have to lose some areas also. And so that's one thing to, especially now when this area is actually grown, it's actually going to have to shrink. So what's more important to you, maintaining those areas within Hobbs or starting at the bottom of Lee County and including Eunice and Jal, which would be more important to you?
Can I add on that question, which also is how far west does 61 need to go?
How far west?
Yeah, I mean, you were just talking about the southern part and all the farm workers in that area, but what about the west of 62? And that western side, that's.
Yeah, I think those are areas where there's a community of interest here as well. And so
What'd you say?
It is true that those are also part of their community of interest. And
O sea, lo de los mapas es trabajo
the redesigning of maps and knowing what is the best, that's his work. So what he can give you is the information that you need.
Right.
For you to keep.
A mí me gustaría que fuera si la mayoría.
I would like a majority district that will be able to be represented by issues and Latino.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Ms. Salcedo?
Just a comment, Justice, if it's okay.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So I'm going to say it first in Spanish and then I'll translate what I said. Señora Saucedo, gracias por su testimonio. La vamos a necesitar a usted porque alguien que desarrolló o que ha hecho el trabajo que usted hizo ha desarrollado mucha confianza con la comunidad y nosotros vamos a necesitar esa confianza para que de veras represente los intereses que usted ha mencionado. So what I just shared is I wanted to thank Ms. Salcedo for the community work that she's done, because we're going to need people who have the trust of the community. And because of the investment that she's made, she's building that kind of trust.
Gracias.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brian, I have a question for you real quick. So in 61, if you could bring it down a little bit, Michael, what's the reason for the little jog over there on the left-hand side? I mean, when I was talking about the west side of 61, like
That's the county line.
so it's just following the county line.
That jog is the county line.
Okay, so it's not trying to capture population or anything in particular.
No, that 61 starts at the Texas-New Mexico border and goes up the entire county and then picks up the minority communities in Hobbs. So what we're hearing from our speakers is that they feel their minority communities continues up into 62, which is absolutely true. The problem that we have is that the parts on the south end of the district are also part of their communities of interest with the farmers. And so to move up north and to take on some more of those Hispanic Latino communities within Hobbs, we would have to lose some other Hispanic Latino farm workers on the southern end. It's reached its limit in terms of population. I guess we'll know more tomorrow. But I do agree with the speakers, though, that the percent Hispanic will continue to rise here. And so we will be able to make a stronger minority districts. But we can't bring it up to 40,000 people.
It all depends where you start.
All depends where you start, which is why I asked the questions about how important are the farm workers down in southern Lee County. And we heard.
And is that a different interest than the people that are working in the city?
What?
Or in the town? Oh, really?
No, so that's.
A lot of their communities working and their families, their mixed status like that. Connecting the city.
This might be an opportunity for a Senate seat that has 50,000 and goes up Lee County. If we could build a minority district there, but we're already pretty close to the max of population as is. So it's.
What I was trying to say is, what you were saying is that it's not disconnected because they have their own families going and work there at the same time. They have connection, relatives there. They have been working with those communities of interest. What you were saying is, I don't know what is the best approach, but it looks since all those, the farmers and the dairy, all that is part of the community, how you pretty much you put a challenge, how you will make it work for me.
And that's what we really want to know is how does it work for you inside your community, as opposed to us telling you how it should be. We want to hear from you about what you want to see it be.
What I understand for her is that right now it's not working for them. So she wants to open the engaging to figure out other maps that would be representative for them.
It would really, really, just like Ann, it would be really wonderful if after the census numbers are out, we saw maps. Maybe you need to make maps.
Next we have Ms. Lorena Sanchez. And so.
Senator Sanchez doesn't need this.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Hello, I think I'm the youngest speaker you've had this night. I just want to say something real quickly because I wasn't prepared to speak today, but I was really moved by our representatives and our senators who were speaking today. I've been in the Chihuahuita, living with my mom when she first started as her single parent, where our community is really the minority. It's poverty there. We see crime daily, not because they're crossing the borders, but it's our youth who are not guided properly, and there is not enough resources here in our community. Never have my household been knocked on the door and spoke to any representative representing us right now. Roswell is my home, and I had inflicted a sexual assault crime in my own hometown. And apart from that, I'm still here fighting because I am passionate about what Roswell has to offer. And Chavez County, we want to put it, because I've been actually doing the work for Chavez County for many years. This is a town I want to be able to grow my children, and I want to be feeling proud of, and really know that my children are going to be in great hands, because I wasn't in those hands. We moved thanks to the hard work my mother put, again, into a district, the same district this person is representing. Never have once, as a minor, has somebody gone and knocked on my mom's door to talk to us. If you're representing us, why are you not talking to us? I've gone to the roundhouse and spoke to my representatives and asked them our issues here, told them what our issues is, what could help us in our community. They do not vote for that. Why is our voices not being heard? We're here, we're trying, we're fighting. And this is what we want. This is, in my opinion, my respects to all New Mexico, but this is the greatest county we have. It is a home beyond anything could be said. We have agriculture. We have dairy workers. We see oil field workers. I have my friends left high school to go work in the oil field to help their parents. And yet they have their families here, and we're starting a future. And yet we don't see no results and no answers. But yet they stand here and say they're representing us whenever our voices are getting lost and we're doing that outreach to connect with them. It's not being heard. I don't know nothing about redistricting. It's something completely new, but I'm here and I'm willing to learn. But I am gonna implore you, don't let our voices go unheard again. I really want a better county, better New Mexico, if that's for it, because we are all a community, all New Mexico. But I want to be able to be heard more. We have a lot of colored people, and we are growing, regardless, maybe not so much with the census, we could see maybe tomorrow, but we need an opportunity. We need a change. And I'm really gonna implore you, let us see that change. Help us find a change, help us find a voice. Each day our community is in fear. You can't go to work without being in fear. You don't know what's gonna be expected. You don't know what's gonna happen.
That's not a way a community can live. Especially if we're not being heard from the people who are representing us right now, today. Thank you.
I didn't get your name,
Lorena Sanchez.
like your last name.
Thank you. It's my husband, but I like it too.
And what precinct are you in?
I don't know to say with my new home. I was in,
Or your mother's?
I believe it was Candy E-Cells,
58?
58, yeah. And I believe now I might be in 59.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, a comment that you may have been our youngest speaker, but you're very well spoken. You should be proud of yourself.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
One comment?
Yes.
Ms. Sanchez, thank you for your comments and in particular for, sharing something painful that you're turning into, action and public action. So that is an important model, not just for other young people, but for all of us, because many times when we go through any kind of a trauma, I know that I have a tendency to kind of pull back from others. Instead, you're here challenging us to bring it out into the public. So I appreciate that. That's important for us. It's important for my children. So as we're doing this and doing this together, that example, I think, just needs to be recognized. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Justice Chavez, there's nobody else on Zoom, and I think that's everybody who told us in advance they would like to speak. And Trooper Portales as well.
Sanchez.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody dare oppose? We're adjourned. Go to.